What is going on, YouTube? It is your boy, Faithful to God. And what I want to do now is just have a live stream. I want to have a discussion with some Hebrew Israelites. But before we do that, I'm going to actually have uh a special guest up in here so we can actually talk about the pews. We can talk about the Georgia pews. All right, give me a second. We're going to be having a quick discussion on the Georgia pews, and then I'm probably going to open up so we can have Hebrew Israelites come in. We can have a discussion. And the rules are as follows. If you self-identify as a Hebrew Israelite and you come into this live stream, you are under the onus to defend your ethnicity claims before we get to anything. I'm going to repeat that again. If you self-identify as a Hebrew Israelite and you come in here, you are under obligation to defend your ethnicity claims before we get to any topic. Fair warning. So I don't want anyone out there to get upset if they feel that I'm bringing up the ethnicity claim, because if you claim to be a Hebrew Israelite, and as you could see, the name of this stream is Christian versus Hebrew Israelites, it is very clear. If you come up in here and you make the assertion that you are an Israelite, you are under obligation to defend your ethnicity claim. All right, let me just get my headphones in. Get these headphones in. Right. There we go. All right. Hopefully I was loud and clear. If not, I'm going to say it again. We're going to have a discussion on various topics. But for any Hebrew Israelite who is watching this, if you self-identify as an Israelite, you are under the claim to demonstrate your claim of being an Israelite before we get to anything else. I'm going to say that one more time. If you are a Hebrew Israelite, and I post a link, you are under the claim to prove your ethnicity claim of being an Israelite. So without further ado, we got a gentleman named Abu. Not Adu, but Abu. What's going on, Abu?
How's it going? Good evening. Not sure if you can hear me. Can you hear me all right?
All righty. All right, say something now.
All right, can you hear me now?
Now you got it.
All right, praise God.
Yes, so we were on Berean TV's channel. We were having a discussion on the Georgia pews and various other topics. For the audience out there, I guess if they're unfamiliar with this topic, could you kind of fill them in on the controversy regarding the Georgia pews and First African Baptist Church, starting from 2009 leading up until the present time?
Or 2018, I think. I'm not even sure where it begins. But so as far as from my perspective, people started popping up on Vocab's forum saying that cursive Hebrew appears on the pews of this church down in Georgia, which was built by slaves. The slaves were writing in cursive Hebrew. It's a fascinating claim. It was an intriguing claim. So I was certainly interested because I'm interested in linguistic subjects. I'm a low-level student of Semitic languages. And so when I started to look at the pews, I couldn't find any discernible Hebrew. So I started asking the different proponents of this view what they were basing the claim on. I later found out they were sort of doing it on the strength of like a tour guide's video or something like that. Nobody could point to any actual Hebrew on the pews. And so I started trying to discuss methodology with people. And in the midst of that, nobody really wanted to discuss methodology. A lot of people wanted to impugn my motivations, and it was a very strange experience. And in the midst of that, in 2019, people started telling me that, if you're really interested in discussing, if you're interested in the topic of the pews, a man that you should check out is Kelly Richardson. He has a video. He knows about this subject. So I went and I looked. I did a search. I found a video of him, and I did a very respectful reply to him. And I did 2 videos basically discussing methodology and sharing that if you're going to make a claim about language on the pews, you should, go about presenting your case in favor of your position, present an argument. And I gave some ideas, some pointers on how to do that. And it sort of snowballed from there. He responded by threatening litigation. Months later, uh, he accused us of witchcraft. Just bizarre stuff.
If I could just stop you just
Sure.
momentarily, if I could just stop you there regarding that particular topic. When you originally made the video,
hmm
at any point in time, did you disrespect Kelly Richardson?
No, no. Not only that, when you re-uploaded the videos, I actually we had private conversations, which we can reveal now, where I specifically asked that we try to be as respectful as possible. You know, no, I never disrespected him. It's funny that they claim that I was disrespectful from the jump, yet they can't show any examples of that in my videos. Certainly not those original videos. You know, after like a year of him, mocking me and insulting me, I started to poke a little fun at him. But no, I definitely didn't insult him in my initial videos. And fascinatingly, I remember on November 22nd, on that infamous Boom Church panel discussion, they did play a little bit of my response to Benaiah. And Kelly Richardson hilariously said, Brown said, okay, we'll give it to you. You were nice to Benaiah in that video. And Kelly Richardson says, yeah, he wasn't nice with me like that, when he did his videos about me. And I
Which
was
was
like,
a complete lie, which was
yeah,
an
it's
utter
just so
lie.
strange. It was such a strange
But
response.
can we actually call that a lie? Because I think that that's an example of Kelly Richardson blatantly lying, as he typically does,
I'm going to
in
be
which he
honest with
made
you.
the right.
I'm
He
sorry.
makes
Go ahead.
yes, he makes the assertion. Kelly Richardson makes the assertion that you insulted his family, that you disrespected him, and meanwhile, anyone can check out the video. Can you give people the name of the video and where they can find it?
Oh, I think, yeah, well, it's on my page. Abu Hamid al Masihi. I'm not sure if I can. Let me see if I can step away. Can you still hear me at this point?
Yes, I can hear you loud and
Okay, good.
clear.
Because yeah,
But
all right. So
the name of the video, because obviously it's no longer on my channel. But what was the name of the video?
I'm checking it now. I think it's simply Hebrew on the pews of a Savannah church. Let's see. I'm looking it up right now. Forgive
In
me
fact,
for the.
what I will do while you continue to talk, I will actually pull it up and I'll drop it
I
in the
have it
live
here.
stream.
It's titled. I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Okay, now I can hear you. I'm sorry. You had
Sorry
technical
about that. Yeah,
difficulties.
I can't post directly, so I'll post it to the private chat. But it's titled. Let's see. It's titled Hebrew Cursive in the Pews of a Georgia Church.
Right, Hebrew cursive. Give me 1 second so I can drop that in. Yep, I got it here. Got it here. So this is the original video. Obviously, the video is no longer on my channel because the so-called powers that be, aka the real crafty council, aka the clown car posse, had the video taken down because I mean clown car posse.
Well,
I mean,
actually, I wanted to answer your
yeah.
question about lying. Can we call it a lie? I'm going to say this about Kelly Richardson. I was reluctant to accuse him of lying on this. For a long time, I thought maybe, it was a misunderstanding. But after, 16 months of seeing the way he moves, and, I no longer think that these were misunderstandings. I think they were deliberate misrepresentations. And I do think at this point there has been a consistent effort, conscious effort at deliberate manipulation on his part. These attempts to recast himself as in the victim of what should have been a cordial dialogue. He continuously would feign offense and declare how offended he was to take attention off of the topic.
Listen, I'm sure by me saying what I just said earlier, when I said clown car pop, and by the way, just for the record, the reason I say that is not because I'm trying to go railing for railing with these people, because I certainly don't want to do that as a Christian. But I also don't want to overlook the fact that these people have engaged in very disrespectful, outlandish, just childish behavior. The only way that I could look at this is by saying that it's very clownish. It's very clown-like, like the way that a clown does something to get entertainment out of people, for the sake of laughs. I look at them as doing that. It's almost like they're doing this out of pure and sheer entertainment just to try to get under people's skin. And I find it very not only disrespectful towards what I would consider to be serious research, people who are actually interested in the topic at hand, people who are trying to take an objective and even-handed approach. But I also see them as being overly emotional. Like it's
Mm.
just emotions for the sake of emotions simply because you're disagreeing with them. Now, here's the thing: neither I nor Abu were disrespectful towards them in the very beginning. Now, I will say this: I am being way sharper than Abu. Abu, even to this point, even now, is not being as sharp as I am right now. Abu has maintained himself with dignity. He has conducted himself as a gentleman. He has refused to go down their their trail of mudslinging. And what he has done, however, is he's shown himself to be an exemplary, I guess, example of how a person should conduct themselves, how a person should treat others in these discussions. Now, I will say this, um, for the sake of this conversation, you know what? I'll take back the clown car posse comment. I'll take back a lot of those things. I want the conversation to be respectful, but I also want to acknowledge the deception that these people have engaged in. They have engaged in terrible behavior. Let's just be honest about it. Very, very bad, poor behavior. And it's unnecessary. Why the need to get engaged in this sort of behavior? There's no reason for it. But Abu, as far as your interactions have been concerned, as far as how you have attempted to interact with these people, I can say for an absolute fact, when I have reshared the videos from your channel, I have always been told by you to make sure that I title the video, at least in the beginning.
Yeah, definitely in the beginning.
In the beginning, I was told by you to label the videos with even-handed, non-confrontational titles.
Yes.
People who watch my channel know that I've labeled videos in the past like Hebrew Israelites debunked or Hebrew Israelite exposed. Yeah. on the occasion of the when Abu decides to go into the topic of the pews, he wanted the conversation to be steered in a very even-handed, dispassionate way. By dispassionate, meaning not taking up either side, just dealing with the evidence as is, looking at the arguments, effectively picking apart the arguments if they're bad, if they're good, pointing out that they're good, that sort of thing. It was the case that when you actually started looking at their arguments, that they were just really poorly thought out, not because it has anything to do with the person claiming they're an Israelite or not an Israelite, but rather just the arguments were just poorly thought out arguments, correct?
Yeah, but really, I did want to focus on the arguments, and I didn't want it to be about, about who's an Israelite and who's not. I used to repeat, even before I got involved with Kelly Richardson, I used to tell people, because there were other people, people who aren't known in Vocab's forum, and there was another forum, right? People would get into the pews, and they wanted to get into this thing of like, oh, you're denying my heritage. And I would say, look, let's leave these identity questions off the table when we discuss this subject of the pews. It's a linguistic subject. And I used to tell people, look, even if I came to agree with you on your identity claim, that would not change my position on whether or not, Hebrew appears on the pews. They're two irrelevant questions. And but they insisted on conflating it. It's amazing how many people did that. And the problem with that is they wind up having a much more emotional investment in the topic, and things really get skewed.
What's interesting about that is, while I'm going to be very clear, right? On this channel, I debunk bad Hebrew Israelite arguments. That's very clear. I don't mince words about the way that I approach the topic of Hebrew Israelism. I don't agree with the ethnicity claims of Hebrew Israelites, having been one who was beguiled by that viewpoint at one point, and one who has actually looked into the claims and dug deep. I am firmly unconvinced of their position. However, when it comes to the pews, whether a person claimed, we could be having a conversation with Ashkenazi Jews on the Georgia pews, and our position would remain the same in terms of what we have all said from the very beginning, even leading up until now. And I'll even say this right now, right, just to be on record. With some of the evidence that has been furnished, some of the scholars sharing their views, I personally, now Abu does not share my position, but I personally seem more convinced with the particular pew in question, the relevant pew that Abu initially looked at, the one that happens to be in his avatar right now. Regarding that particular pew, I am convinced that there's Arabic on that pew, or at least some form of crude Arabic. There's something there. Although, can you share for the audience, so the audience knows, Abu and I have actually talked about this. Abu, share with the audience what you and I talked about, theoretically speaking, if in fact there is Arabic there, how that Arabic would have come about appearing on the pew, what
Sure.
the theory, at least that we both, ironically enough, Abu actually contributed to this theory in part, even though he's not firmly convinced of it, but he still contributed. Could you
Right.
share what the theory was?
Right. So in terms of the plausibility, again, as Faithful alluded to, this is actually a point of disagreement between me and him, whether or not there's Arabic on the pews. I still remain skeptical because a number of scholars have come out and affirmed that there's Hebrew on that pew. Now Faithful and others, accept what the scholars say, and that's fine. But one thing that I've discussed is, at least because some people have waived it. I'm actually glad we're discussing this, because Benaiah, for example, respect to Benaiah, but Benaiah sort of took the position publicly that it was implausible that there would be Arabic on the pews of this church. So just touching on the plausibility, the possibility of Arabic on the pews, one way that it could happen is, by the way, I'm sorry, it's Quranic Arabic at that. It's a verse from the Quran, and that's where Benaiah said that that's, preposterous. And so one of the things that I've noted is that this particular Quranic phrase is part of one of the shorter chapters at the end of the Quran, and it's something that's taught to children. When children are learning to memorize parts of the Quran, this is like part of those early stages. Now, I think people make the mistake of assuming, because there are stark contradictions between Orthodox Islam and Orthodox Christianity, they assume that anything from Islam must contradict Christianity. But, lots of statements in the Quran are not necessarily at odds with the Christian faith. And I would say this is a relatively benign statement. All the statement says is the God of mankind. It's from a chapter that tells people to call on the Lord of mankind, the ruler of mankind, the God of mankind, say that you seek refuge, with the God of mankind. And so what I've proposed, for example, as an analogy, first off, as an example, there's the claim of a Congo cosmogram within the church at First African Baptist Church. And one of the questions I would ask is, are Congo cosmograms, is that typically part of the Baptist faith? Now, the reason why I asked that rhetorical question is because obviously the answer is no. That's a vestige of the congregants of their heritage and their culture before adopting, the Baptist faith.
By the way,
And
shout
so,
out to King Charles for the super chat. Go ahead.
yep. So the Congo cosmogram is an example of that vestiges of their faith before they embraced the, Baptist Christianity, can remain and get expressed within the church. The Congo cosmogram is an example of that. So one of the things that I would think that could happen is that if you had a child who was taught this chapter of the Quran, or at least the prayer that it commands people to pray, which is to say, I seek refuge in, the God of mankind, it's possible that a child who memorized that line, later on converted to Christianity, and they retained that line because that line in a vacuum is not contrary to the Christian faith. Declaring your allegiance to the God of mankind is not, it's not necessarily problematic, and therefore that's why I don't think it's implausible. It could have just been, something that was memorized from before they embraced the Christian faith. Someone may have taught a child a little bit of Quran, and by the way, this prayer is used, as one scholar pointed out, this prayer is used to, in situations of trouble and and stress and stuff like that. And so it also makes sense that someone who went through the horrors of slavery would retain a prayer that's used precisely for difficult situations, to help you get, so that's why I don't see anything implausible about this line surviving a conversion to Christianity.
Right. And by the way, shout out to my brother Phil Fox for the super chat. I'm going to be doing something in the future with Phil Fox on this channel. He is Native American and he is absolutely Christian. Shout out to him. Thank you so much for the super chat, brother. What I do want to say is, my view is, and this is not a definitive view, like I think it's absolutely the case, but I think it's very plausible. I think it's plausible that there seems to be some sort of Arabic on that particular pew.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't think all the other pews have Arabic on them, nor do I think that there's Hebrew or anything like that on those pews. I think that's still up for debate, but I do absolutely think that it is highly likely that there is Arabic on that particular pew, given the fact that something like 30% of the slaves that came over from the west coast of Africa, West and Central Africa, happened to be Muslim by religion.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that they came over to this country. In fact, we have examples even in the Caribbean, in Haiti, where you have particular slaves who still memorize Quranic verses. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
there's a particular prince. In fact, I'm trying to remember his name, from Timbuktu. Let me trying to remember what was his name. You know what, I'm gonna just go ahead and Google it on the spot.
Mm-hmm. Well, there were a
All right.
bunch. There was even within Georgia, in Sapelo Island, there were
Oh,
people.
Abdul Rahman, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Abdul Rahman Ibrahim ibn Sori, who was an African prince and an emir who was captured from Fota Halon, the region in Guinea, West Africa, and sold as a slave. So this gentleman was actually let loose and sent back to West Africa, after a sultan of Morocco requested for his release. And so I find it fascinating, right? Because here you have a person who was taken into slavery, who was a Muslim by religion, and when he came over here, he still retained his understanding of Arabic. In fact, that's how they found out that he was Muslim. He was able to read and write in Arabic, if I'm not mistaken. I think he went to a newspaper, or he was working at a newspaper, and he was essentially told to write something, or he wrote something down. I forget what it was exactly. It escapes me. It's very vague, but I know that when they discovered that he could, I'm actually going to just very quickly, if I remember how it was. All right, give me a second. Oh, here we go. Here we go. So in 1826, it says Abdul Rahman wrote a letter to his relatives in Africa. A local newspaperman, Andrew Malshock, who was Dutch, sent the letter to the United States Senator Thomas Reed from Mississippi, who was in town at the time, and Reed forwarded it to the U.S. Consulate in Morocco. Since Abdul Rahman wrote in Arabic, Malshock and the U.S. government assumed that he was a Moor. After the Sultan of Morocco read the letter, he asked President Adams and Secretary of State Henry Clay to release Abdul Rahman. So he was actually released. He went back to West Africa, and so that's how that happened. But there's an example of someone who was writing in Arabic, right? Then you have other examples, right? So I think that the plausibility that you have people retaining the Arabic language in some capacity, even after being converted to Christianity. And then, as you said, there's nothing there necessarily in that specific Quranic verse, if just isolated, and no theological implications are introduced. There's nothing there to negate that sort of verse having implications that could be applied to the God of the Bible, right?
Yeah,
For example.
exactly. There's nothing preventing you from taking it with you into the Christian faith.
Of course. And so I seem to be more convinced now than I was initially, because
Well,
I'll
let's
be
tell the
honest.
people why. Now there's prominent scholars that are endorsing the position that there's Arabic on that particular pew.
Right.
The first one to give a definitive statement in favor of that.
But I'm not convinced of Hebrew, though. That's one thing. Of all the arguments I've ever seen proposed for Hebrew, none of them seem convincing. But the Arabic one certainly seems convincing. And I think because of the fact, and not only that, was it Jeffrey Kahn, the top,
Yep.
the top scholar, the Regius
The Hebrew chair
professor,
at Cambridge. Yep, the
the
Regius
Hebrew
professor
chair at Cambridge University.
in UK,
This
the
is a
original Cambridge.
right. This is a gentleman who is the top professor in Hebrew, and if I'm not mistaken, Arabic as well.
Well, he's a professor of Arabic because he's he's a general Semiticist. So he also teaches Arabic at Cambridge, but he's the Hebrew chair. So he can certainly speak well on he has the credentials to speak on matters pertaining to Hebrew and Arabic.
Right. Well, I find it fascinating, right, that here you have a Hebrew professor, the top Hebrew professor, looking at the pew and saying, this is the particular pew in question, not talking about all the pews, but that specific pew was not Hebrew. And anyone who has proposed Hebrew, for example, in the documentary that was put out by, what was it, the University of Cincinnati?
No, it later got purchased by the University of Cincinnati. It was done by an independent filmmaker known as Alvin Elmore. And
Alvin
he
Elmore,
wound
that's
up
correct.
selling it to the University of Cincinnati. Hilariously, now Kelly Richardson is claiming that the university is, quote unquote, suppressing the documentary.
Yeah, and he claims that they're somehow endorsing his position. Meanwhile, his position was that he thought that he could see certain, like, as he mispronounces it, Gaaz letters, really
Mhm.
Ge'ez letters. But here's the thing. Even the claim that he makes for Ge'ez doesn't seem compelling at all. I mean, it just seems in my personal opinion, arbitrary. And
It
look,
shows he hasn't learned anything from the previous videos. He's
no,
seen our
I mean,
videos.
but
He even shows
even
clips.
the
And
Ephraim Isaac,
Isaac,
you know,
Ephraim Isaac. Yep.
his particular claim for Ge'ez doesn't seem compelling to me. I'm just going to be honest. I don't find the claim compelling. What I do find compelling, however, is Arabic. I think that's pretty. Uh, I would say it's the most convincing argument out of all the arguments, to be honest. And that's why I'm favoring the position a little bit more now, especially given that you have scholars that have come forth and looked at the pews, people who have a better knowledge of Arabic than either you and I. Not saying that we're making them the the
We're not giving them
definitive
the
end
final
all
word.
be all. Yeah, like they're not the end all be all when it comes to the topic, but their input is it's welcome and it's obviously helpful.
Well, let's say
But
this about the different languages.
yeah.
So there's different languages that have proponents. People saying, I think it's Hebrew, I think it's Ge'ez, I think it's Arabic. Uh, Arabic so far has the most support. It has the best case because it's the only language of the various languages that have been advocated for. Arabic is the only language which has a real scholar, not an imaginary scholar, a real scholar, two real scholars now apparently backing a coherent phrase, and a historically attested phrase. For these other languages like Ge'ez, I mean, with all due respect to Ephraim Isaac, uh, what's being presented are individual characters in a vacuum. And my position from way back in October of 2019 has been that when you're trying to liken a marking to an individual character that's not in a phrase or sentence, just sort of devoid of context, then it becomes harder to make that case. It becomes a lot less clear because you could see all sorts of things when you're doing that. Like, for example, I wish I could share my screen, but there's some of the characters that are likened to Ge'ez characters could be likened to Hebrew characters. They have been likened to Hebrew characters, to uh, to Latin characters, for example. Something like like the Ge'ez Ha, or the Ge'ez Shah. It's South. These could just as easily be interpreted as other characters. Actually, can I share a thread in the Would you
Sure.
be able to share your screen if I
Yes.
link to something? Hold on one
Absolutely.
second, then I'll pull this up real quick, and then maybe you could scroll through it just to
But
show
I
what
want
I.
you to share something with the audience just to be on record about this, because I think that some people, particularly the less careful from the I'll say from the Hebrew Israelite side, because those are the people who we have interacted with the most on this topic, seem to be of the belief that you're that apparently let me not say, well, let me actually take that back.
So I just posted a link in the
I'm gonna
chat.
reword what I'm about to say. Let me reword
Okay.
this. There are people who are much more careful, for example, Orthodox more, who
Yeah.
I think implicitly tried to present a case on his channel, on the Debate Talk for You channel that he's now currently hosting, where he said that the particular pews, or the various claims for the pews, shows that the scholars, at least for the most part, the majority of them, have angled for some sort of language, whereas you seem to be the only one angling for the view that there's no language on the pews. Now to be fair, there, if I'm not mistaken, there was also a Quranic scholar. Was it the third scholar? Remember, you showed two scholars in the video, and there was a third scholar. He actually
Gudarzi.
said
Yeah,
that
he was
he
a
wasn't
Near
convinced
Eastern
that,
Studies scholar,
yeah, he didn't
professor.
believe that there was anything on the pews. He was
On that
very
particular
hesitant
pew he looked at, yeah.
on that
And
particular pew.
Orthodox more
So,
mentioned that.
okay, so then,
Mohsen
so
Gudarzi.
for at the very least, there's at least one scholar who, or more than one scholar actually, if I think about it, because there was also the gentleman in question in the. That's why I brought up the Cincinnati documentary, that was purchased by the University of Cincinnati from Alvin Elmore.
Cryptic Quest, it's titled.
So, do you remember the Hebrew scholar?
Joffrey Khan, who are we referring to? There's been
In
a
the
lot of different scholars.
documentary.
Yes, Richard Saracen.
Richard Saracen. Do you remember when he looked at, I believe it was two of the markings,
Yeah,
and he
and a
thought
lot of
that
the Israelites misunderstood him.
and they completely misunderstood him, and he thought that he saw two letters that looked like they might or could be Hebrew letters, but the rest of it was just completely there was no, just to be on, because I want to be on record about this.
Mm-hmm.
He concluded that there wasn't a discernible phrase on the pew, right? That he was utterly well, actually, you know what? I can actually play the audio. I'm not going to play the video, but I can play the audio portion because I do have the video. If I can actually play that very quickly, I think it will
Yeah. So
give.
what he winds up saying is he doesn't even say they could be Hebrew characters, although of course that's sort of implicit. What he says is this looks like that Hebrew character, this looks like that Hebrew character, and then he says, but they're in the context of things that don't look at all like Hebrew. And it's not just about some resemblance to a Hebrew character, it's about what the collective forms. And that has been precisely my position since way back in October and even before, that
Exactly.
you can find all sorts of things that look like characters from all sorts of scripts. I fully acknowledge that there are things on the pews that look like Hebrew characters, but there's also things that look like all sorts of things, Latin characters, is
Right.
characters, whatever you want. And you can find that everywhere. And it's funny that Kelly Richardson to this day doesn't understand that. His most recent video shows that he doesn't understand that that you can find, I mean, even in something like an English phrase, you can find Latin characters that look like Ge'ez characters. You can find random markings that look like Hebrew or Ge'ez or Latin characters, you
Right.
know?
In fact, I'm
So
going to pull up the video momentarily so we can just hear that portion. Because the thing is, I believe that there were some who may have taken his words to mean that he saw Hebrew letters. So
yeah, that's
therefore
literally
he,
what they're claiming. He said there's
therefore
Hebrew on
they,
the pews.
so therefore they believe that he saw Hebrew on the pews. But no, it's the other way around. He saw letters that looked like they could be Hebrew, but in
Or
light of
just that they
no, no,
resembled Hebrew
well,
characters. And I see that
let me
as
just get
well.
this out, Abu. Let me just get this out. Let me
Sorry.
get this out. Let me without being interrupted because I want the audience to catch this.
Okay.
He saw two letters that looked like they might be Hebrew letters. However, when considered with the rest of the markings on the pews, which he was definitive were not Hebrew, the case is that finding letters, it would be illogical to find letters on the pew and assume languages on the pews because two characters resemble certain Hebrew letters while everything else around them do not resemble Hebrew letters. For there to be actual language on the pews, you have to have words, discernible words that give rise to phrases. It's not just merely a letter or maybe like the appearance of something that looks like it could be a letter. It has to be a actual phrase. That's why that particular pew, the one that's proposed to be Arabic, I think it has the better case because it's an actual phrase that is written in what looks like Arabic, right? Looks like at the very least, I guess you could say, somewhat resembles Arabic. At least resembles Arabic much more than anything else, right? Resembles Arabic way more than it resembles Hebrew. And I think if given the history that we know of particular slaves coming over to this country, knowing Arabic, being Muslims in religion, then converting over to the Christian faith, regardless of how they converted, the point being they still converted over generations later when their descendants carry on perhaps in some manner crypto traditions, whether it be learning Arabic phrases, language, whatever. The fact that they were still whoever marked those pews from the slaves knew Arabic is still, if that is in fact Arabic, is remarkable in and of itself. It shows that one, there's a tradition of that we can see in other parts of the Western world where slaves were taken, and two, it shows also it shows that even there, for example, people might be turned off by the idea that there's a phrase that one can find in the Quran on the pews, but let's just be honest here for a second, right? Christian Arabs will use expressions such as Allah, right? This is a
Mm-hmm.
phrase that's found in the Quran. However, it's also a very generic phrase that can just mean the God, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
very general. It could be used for the God of the Bible or the God of the Quran, right? And there's
Mm-hmm.
no
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
syncretism.
it's literally all over any Arabic translation of the Bible will have Allah all over it.
And it's not syncretism. It's not being done because these people are practicing Chrislam or something to that effect. It's just simply the fact that the Arabic speakers refer to the God as Allah. And that phrase, the God, can be used in reference to the God of the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
or it can be used in reference to the God of the Quran. But obviously, if you're a Christian, the likely scenario is it's being used in reference to the God of the Bible. And
Mm-hmm.
the fact that you can find this phrase on the Quran would be no different than, say, for example, I'm just going to use this. This might be a little controversial because I know Abu's viewpoint on this, but it's like finding the phrase about like a hen, the phrase where God, well, yeah, where God the Son, where Jesus Christ tells the people of Israel that he um wanted to collect them as a mother hen collects her chicks.
Mm-hmm.
and then finding that same phraseology being used in Second Ezra. Now, Second Ezra, by scholarship, has been shown to have been written after the fact. So it could have been the case that someone, perhaps someone, a Jewish Christian or someone to that effect, may have incorporated that idea that they saw in the gospel into Second Ezra. Now, here's the thing. Now, if we look at Second Ezra as a, as most Christians look at it, as a corpus that, useful to read but not inspired. This is most Christians' position on this, not all Christians, but most Christians, regardless of denomination. The point is that that phrase being found in Second Ezra wouldn't somehow mean that because you find the phrase in Second Ezra that Second Ezra is the author of the phrase, right? Rather, what could be the case is the general phrase, the God of humanity, knowing that the God of the Bible is in fact the God of humanity. And regardless of what one thinks of the Quran, where I'll just be honest, I believe the Quran is false. Even still, the phrase the God of humanity applies to the God of the Bible, right? It is still a phrase that is applicable to the God of the Bible, regardless of where the phrase is used. If whether it appears in the Quran or somewhere else, heck, for all we know, it could appear in some early Arabic Christian manuscript
I
where
was
they.
just going to say that. I was just going to say that the Quran seems to me to be a composite, sort of pulled together from multiple sources, and therefore, and some of those sources could very well have been Christian. Like, yes, there are points in the Quran where it appears to contradict the Christian faith, but there's other parts that basically seem very Christian. Like if Islam had never come about and archaeologists found the Quran, they'd assume it was some sort of uh, heterodox Christian corpus. I think that would be the position of secular scholars if they found the Quran, without the backdrop of Islam against it.
Right. But still, if one were to take the phrase the God of humanity, and I'll put it to you this way, I also look at it as being a case, and this is where I'm going to make a case for the Christian faith. I look at it very similarly to the Apostle Paul taking the Greek poems from Aratus of
Mm-hmm.
Soli and Epimenides of Crete, taking their poems that they directed at Zeus and reappropriating them and giving that glory back to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So, in the same way, it could be the case that the ancestors of the slaves that were in First Baptist Church, First African Baptist Church in Savannah, Georgia, very well could have been Muslims in West Africa before they came to this country. Once they came to this country, their descendants became Christians, right? Regardless of by what means they became Christians. Once they became Christians, it could be the case that they held on to this sort of family tradition of this particular phrase from the Quran. And it could be the case that once members later on in history, the descendants, became firmly entrenched in the Christian faith, fully embracing the faith, they reappropriated the phrase and gave that glory to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the
Mm-hmm.
God of the scriptures, the God of the entire earth. And I believe that that very well could be the case, not in that they're giving glory to the God of Islam, but they're giving glory to the God of the Bible by taking a phrase that would have been used and applied to the God of Islam and reappropriating it and giving it to the God of mankind, the God of the Bible, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I think that's the more
Mm-hmm.
plausible scenario for me personally. I seem more convinced of that rather than the idea that these were just like crypto Muslims that were still trying to
Mm-hmm.
practice Islam in private and
Right.
attend the church. Now, of course, I'm sure Orthodox more would disagree with us on that point, but that's
No,
again,
he
this
might
is
actually agree. I mean, or he would treat it as plausible. I think, you know,
right.
he would say that both are plausible. There
Yeah,
could
both
be.
both are certainly plausible. No one can overlook the idea that it could also be the case that you had crypto Muslims in these churches and they were still practicing some form of Islam in private and just happened to put that there just for their own benefit's sake, right? Just to remind themselves that their faith was in their opinion still in Islam.
Mm-hmm.
It could be the case that that could also well be a plausibility. But again, I'm just speaking from my own personal viewpoint and what I perceive to be the case. But I could be wrong on that. And you
Mm.
know what? If I happen to be wrong, I'll gladly accept that I'm wrong on that.
By the
Right?
way, can we show the thing on the relevant to the pews? Show
Yes.
the thread that I put in the chat. I'm
Yes.
unable to share it, but maybe you could.
Yes, I am about to show it in a moment. It's gonna show up on the screen. Hopefully, I can just copy and paste it before it shows up. All right, here we go. Oh, it's not gonna let me do it. I gotta do it the other way. All right, let me do it this way. So we are going to show the relevant wall post. Let me actually make sure that I don't get a message. I'm gonna make my screen small. Make this small. All right, there we go. All right, I am going to share momentarily, and you can guide us along. And after this, I think I'm gonna try to open up the floor for Hebrew Israelites to come in, because I certainly want to have discussions with them on
Yeah, I wish some of the people from Bereans chat were here. I'd like the guy, the gentleman, I forget his first, Jermaine Howell, or anybody. I'd love to discuss the pews with whomever.
So do you mind if I read this, or?
Yeah, please do. Unfortunately there's a typo towards the beginning, but nonetheless.
The same set of markings on a particular pew at First African Baptist Church were interpreted by Benaiah Israel as left to right, solitro kof. Pardon me,
you got it.
Kof het. That's right. Yeah, because hold on a second, I got to get close to because I got my laptop way back here, so my mic doesn't pick up the fan. Interpreted by, I assume, by Benaiah Israel as left to right, solitro kof het. Interestingly, interpreted by David Bunis as possibly Ashuri Yod, as the Ashuri Yod Shin, right?
Sin,
and apparently interpreted by Ephraim Isaac as right to left Ge'ez Hoi Sot, possibly preceded by a horizontal Nahas. That seems to be a glaring testament to the extent to which the relevant markings are very much open to multiple interpretations, which is to say, far from clear.
Yeah. So if we could stop here, when Benaiah Israel proposed that was kof het het, some certain Israelites were excited by that, and they were like, "Boom, there you go." Kelly Richardson was saying it's confirmed. There's Hebrew on the pews, even before they misrepresented Bunis. He was saying that it's confirmed based on Benaiah proposing first het het and then kof het het. So, but mainly the not counting that line on the right, Benaiah was interpreting that as two chets, the two instances of the eighth character of the Hebrew Aleph Bet. However, then when Bunis thought he might, do we no longer have it on the screen? Bunis saw a sin, which is also called the shin, but a sin, the character, the second character in Israel or Yisrael, those two chets, he saw it as a completely different character and a single character at that. And a number of Israelites were saying, "Oh, Bunis said Israel's on the pew, so you have to accept it." Some of them were the exact same Israelites. And then now Kelly Richardson's excited about how Ephraim Isaac proposed two characters there, but two completely
and this was the
different
relevant pew. So the relevant pew,
it's all for the same pew. We have these radically different scripts, different characters, different people, proposing for the same markings. And so that's a testament to how vague it is. Now, if you could, do you think you could scroll down into the comment section?
Oh, okay. So you want me to look, because I actually just have the image. So let me go ahead and do that very quickly. And hopefully people will not tag me, because I hate when that little tag thing shows up when I'm showing. Let me just go ahead and go back and do it this way.
Yeah, if a tag comes up, just hit the X, on the tag.
All right, just want to make sure that because I don't know if people know that they're showing up in the live stream. And
what we're doing here is basically a precursor. I'm going to make a more clean, and I don't know if professional is the right adjective, but a cleaner version of a video response to Kelly Richardson's most recent video. But I'm just showing that I have a post from way back in January that already addresses the subject, which he's, with all due respect, which he's clumsily stumbling around in, trying to make a big deal about Ephraim Isaac, proposing a few his characters on the pew.
Gotcha. All right, here we go. So I'm going to present again. Here we go. Hopefully it'll show up. Let's see. Here we go. All right, tell me if you can see that.
Okay, now I can see it. If you can, okay, so if we can go into the comments section.
Yeah, so we are actually in the comments. So Jonathan, pardon me, Jonathan.
So keep going down until you get to, you'll see I share an image. That's somebody else. And that's a gentleman putting a joke. Yeah, you see it, but even though he's being flippant, that sort of, you could see that as well. Okay, so here we go.
So addendum. All right, so it says addendum. Without the frame of reference provided by a sentence, markings can be rotated a variety of different ways and likened to a myriad of different characters from different scripts. I'll share some examples in this subthread using the markings. Example 1. Turn this way. Ephraim Isaac likened this to the Ge'ez characters, the relevant characters there. and Abu shows them. And here goes
And now go into the subthread. Now we get more examples.
example. Ooh, okay, never mind. This thing
Went a little
just
too
jumped
far.
a little too far. I don't know what just happened there. All right,
Okay,
here we
there
go.
you go. Keep going up.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
there you go.
It says example 2, however, if we rotate the pew 180 degrees to the same markings resembling two completely different Ge'ez characters, and then there our friend Abu shows that if you just rotate it, you're going to get a completely different
Ba
set of
and ta.
characters.
Yeah.
Right. Now
And
he
also,
says
wait, and real quick, notice that it also looks like a it looks a little bit like a M, like a Latin M.
like a Latin M.
And if you go back up to example 1.
Or if one wants to get interesting, or I don't know, they could let's see, they could see like a little dinosaur or something. Like there's like a
go
dinosaur
back
like
up to the first. Yeah, that's right, exactly. The child dinosaur. Go up. Seriously though, go up to the first example for a second.
Okay, all right.
So here's the wait, not yet. You're not there yet. Keep going up just a little bit more to the first example. You're on the second example.
Oh, what just happened there? Oh, yikes. All right, there we go.
Okay, so scroll down now to that first example. There's the
this
McDonald's.
Is live video, y'all. This is
yeah. So that first
beauty of live
example, what you
video.
see at the top right, those are the two Ge'ez characters, right? Wait, go up a little bit, just a little bit. What you have at the top of the screen. So you see that. Not only that, if you look at it, how could you say definitively those are Ge'ez characters rather than, for example, Latin characters? That could just as easily be a U and a W, or a Y and a W, if you take into account the line that's coming out of the side of it. You know what I mean? So now let's scroll down. Let's go to the subsequent examples.
Yes. Example 2.
You did example 2. Now let's do example 3.
Example 3. If that is turned 90 degrees, the markings can look like the Latin characters EC.
Don't they? Doesn't that look like the E and a C to you?
Right here. This is what he's talking about. The E and the C.
So okay, now let's go to example 4.
When Benaiah looked at these same markings, he thought he saw two Hebrew hets, which makes no sense. Let's just, two Hebrew hets, even confidently saying it's not hard to see what that is.
Yeah, he said that the night of that Boom Church panel discussion that afternoon on that back on the 22nd of November. He said that like confidently. He said, it's you don't have to be like a scholar to see that that's obviously two hets, that when this character goes like that, it's a het.
Yeah. Okay. Meanwhile, the actual scholar David Bunis proposed Yisrael as a possible reading. That was where the standard Hebrew shin appeared, and also he assumed that there was a lamed there that
at
vaguely,
the end, at the other end of the
vaguely,
pew.
Right, but that everything else was obviously not discernible. There was characters that were clearly not discernible. Example 6: the same markings can even resemble the English letters W U.
Yeah.
In fact, I would even propose. Like, I don't know, you could have done this. That this looks like a Y, like a very
yeah, I agree with
clumsy Y, right?
Exactly. Now here's an example of why this is. See, Kelly Richardson is so excited by someone proposing, and it was a very short clip, so we don't know how seriously or how definitively Ephraim Isaac was proposing this. But let me give you another example. Suppose someone drew a circle on a pew. Like, imagine we were looking at a circle.
Right.
Now the question would arise, what are we looking at? It could be just a circle, or it could be a Latin letter O, or it could be a Phoenician script, i.e. a Paleo-Hebrew ayin, or it could be a Ge'ez ayin. Right. Like, how would you know? You know what I mean? And it's the same thing.
Here's some more. So even the Latin characters N and M are not outside the realm of possibility, right?
Yeah.
He says, example 8, Ephraim Isaac looked at a different set of markings and proposed the Ge'ez characters, Risaha. However, see the next example. Example 9. If those markings are rotated 180 degrees, one could just as easily propose the alternative Ge'ez characters Bataga.
Mm-hmm. And so on. But the point is, this is why, trying to propose individual characters in a vacuum is so, it's for, in my opinion, it's unhelpful, because the reason why I want people to give phrases is because a phrase anchors your statements, right? So, for example, in the video that we did towards the end of the video on the sanctuary, you remember the video on the sanctuary?
Absolutely, yes.
So towards the end, I went into the sort of captions that are on the stained glass windows,
right?
And I showed how even in these statements, certain individual Latin characters used in English phrases look like Ge'ez characters. They do. It's just a fact. right? So it would beg the question, well, how do we know? Is that a Ge'ez character, or is that a Latin character? And the reason we know they're Latin characters is because they're part of English phrases. The phrase provides the context. However, if you don't have the context that a sentence provides, what happens is that something that looks like a character could be rotated any which way and likened to a myriad of different things. And that's why trying to claim that a marking looks like an individual character in a vacuum is very inconclusive.
Right.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm glad we got that out.
Yes. So what's interesting is that now that we're on and for the record, just so you could share your views, the reason why you are not convinced of language is precisely because of what we just saw, right? That it's the idea is, if you're presupposing language is on the pews, you're going to see language on the pews. If you're already someone who's predisposed to a particular bias regarding language, let's say Ephraim Isaac is himself biased to the Ge'ez language being Ethiopian, right? Or the fact that David Boone, as being a scholar of Hebrew, might more than likely search. If someone tells him there seems to be language there and it's Hebrew, because he is a Hebrew professor, he's more than likely to see Hebrew, being that he's told that there's Hebrew. I think what's more salient is when you show the pews to someone who is not told that there's language there and then ask, what do you see? Could it be the case that if one were to take that sort of methodology, that sort of an approach, it could be the case that a person may give a completely different answer than simply presupposing what they have already studied or what they're already inclined to believe? In the case of Hebrew Israelites, where they believe that somehow the pews are indicative of some sort of language because they think the slaves are really the Hebrews, or whatever the case may be. If a person is just asked to look at the pews with no presuppositions in mind, they'd probably have a harder time discerning language on there if they're just given pews with no context and just asked, what do you see? Right?
Exactly. And not only that, but it's also a methodological point, that people, Kelly Richardson still seems like he still wants to play this game where it's like a scholar said something that I think that I think is workable to my position. So that's it. The debate is done. But that's not how it works. It doesn't work like that in academia. You're allowed to question the positions of scholars, and there are methodological questions. So even if a scholar says this looks like a character from that script, that is inconclusive. Do we have a
Yes,
another
we actually have
participant?
our first guest. So we have Menelek in here. What's going on, Menelek? What is your position, theological position?
Or if you'd like to discuss the pews.
Hello.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out, because I'm subscribed to you guys, but I saw you guys like trying to figure out. Are you trying to figure out if jazz is a language?
No, not at all. No, we're not trying to guess if Ge'ez is a language. What we were discussing was certain markings resemble Hebrew characters. The same markings resemble
Well, it's
Ge'ez
the
characters.
same language family. It's
No, I
literally
know.
the
Wait a
same
minute, hold on a
language.
second. Wait, hold up. Menelik. So let's do this one by one. So you asked a question, he's answering your question, because I don't want to have to be unbroadcasting people so other people can get their thoughts out. So it would be fair to just let him answer your question, and then this way you could ask a follow-up question after the fact. All right, so go ahead and finish.
Clarify.
So could you ask your question one more time for him, Menelik?
Well, I was just trying to figure out what you guys are doing, because and he I mean, go ahead, and then I'll ask the second question. Basically, it's the same language family as Aramaic, Hebrew, well, the real Hebrew, and
So what I was noting is that, well, yes, Ge'ez is a Semitic language just like Hebrew, so there is going to be overlap between different Semitic languages. But what I was talking about was, this even applies to characters that aren't related. So people are seeing, one person is seeing one thing and another person is seeing something different. And so while, for example, a Ge'ez ayin or ayin is, related to a Hebrew ayin, like the Phoenician ayin is a circle and so too is the Ge'ez. That's not the case with, for example, a person who's proposing ha, or ha, excuse me, or the south, the shah. And another person was proposing a chet, like the Hebrew chet is a completely different character from, say, the Ge'ez shout, right? And so the only point I was making is that these markings, different people are seeing radically different things, in very different scripts. And so what we were saying is that it's incredibly vague, and the demonstration of that is the fact that different people are looking at it and coming to different conclusions. And even though the languages are related in some cases, they're coming to conclusions that really don't fit together well. That's the point. And also, even stuff that has not been advocated can also be seen there, like a Latin C or a Latin N or M or W or U, etc. I'm sorry, but go ahead. You were going to say you had a follow-up.
Well, I'm just, okay, so we know that Bibles were written off of certain manuscripts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Ethiopic Tewahedo was written off of a certain manuscript, which is the only manuscript to contain New and Old Testament. You know what I mean? It also predates, they used the Garima Gospels to create a Tewahedo. They didn't create a Bible. They created the Tewahedo, right?
Wait a minute. Hold on. Before you go on, when you the Garima Gospel, the illuminated gospel books.
Yeah. What I'm saying is they didn't create a Bible with it. They created a Tewahedo, right?
And how are you using Tewahedo? Tewahedo meaning like unification, the name of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church is what you're saying. Like, how are you using Tewahedo?
That's the name of their
church
book that they wrote out of the Garima Gospels.
No, wait a minute. Hold on a second. The Garima Gospel books, which are illuminated gospel books.
Well, no, that's a manuscript, and it's
but they're
and then they use that.
They're illuminated gospel manuscripts, right? You understand that they're the 4 gospels in manuscript form that have illuminated images and the pages and so I don't understand where you're going with this though.
Oh, okay. Let me try again. It is a manuscript that they used to create a Tewahedo, not a Bible.
I'm still unsure.
The Tewahedo.
Yeah, I'm unsure too. I'm sorry.
Hold on. I'm getting to it.
Okay.
The Tewahedo predates the King James Bible by 800 years. Okay. Mm-hmm. So even though your manuscript.
Wait a minute,
even though the manuscript that they used to create a King James Bible is older, the Tewahedo predates any Bible ever.
No, that's incorrect.
It does.
Why. I'll explain to you why. Number one, we know for a fact, because I can actually show you a scholarly paper that deals with the Garima Gospel books that indicates that they were created, if I'm not mistaken, in the 8th century. And there were already manuscripts that now it's one of the oldest illuminated gospel manuscripts, but it's if not the oldest, but it itself is not the oldest Bible manuscript around.
No, this is what I'm saying.
No, please listen. No. You listen. Please listen.
Because you misheard me.
Okay, so can you repeat yourself?
Yes. Okay, for example, the King James Bible used manuscripts to create their Bible, right? But the Ethiopic Garima Gospels, they used that to create a Tewahedo, not a Bible, but the Tewahedo.
Didn't you say it was the oldest? It was the oldest manuscript?
No. The Tewahedo.
Tewahedo just means unification.
Hold on, bro. The Tewahedo is an actual book that predates any Bible by 800 years. That's a fact, bro.
Okay, can you give us a source to back up
the book Tewahedo is the source?
I mean, I'm familiar with the word Tewahedo, right? I have a video discussing the term.
It's a book, bro.
Well, can you show
I'm
us
not
something?
familiar with that. Maybe it is. Maybe
just to be fair to him, can you show us the source that you have that says what you're saying right now?
Bro, the book.
Can you show us a source that is saying what you're saying right now, sir? I'm just asking.
Bro, okay. If you go on Google and you type in oldest Bible, the Ethiopic Tewahedo it predates all Bibles, bro.
No, it doesn't.
Not the manuscript. The manuscript is not the oldest.
It doesn't predate all. No. I'm gonna show you how this is false. I'm gonna tell you why this is false. It's
not false.
Codex Sinaiticus is a Bible.
It's not a Bible. It's a manuscript.
It is a Bible.
I just killed you, bro. It's a manuscript, not a Bible.
It's not just merely a manuscript. Listen to me. Hold up. Let me.
Everybody watching, I just killed this dude. The Codex is not a Bible. It's a manuscript.
No, you did not. I
did just kill you, bro.
I'm gonna debunk you right now. Here we go. Garima, because you don't know what you're talking about. So now I'm gonna have to cut you, and this is how it goes down. And look.
But I just cut you, bro, because the Codex is not a Bible.
Can you be quiet so I can read this? The Garima Gospels are two ancient Ethiopic gospel books. Garima 2, the earlier of the two, is believed to be the earliest surviving complete illuminated Christian manuscript. Now it says monastic tradition holds that they were composed close to the year 500, a date supported by recent radiocarbon analysis. Samples from Garima 2 propose the date of 39 AD to 570 AD, while counterpart dating of samples from Garima 1 propose a date of 530 to 660. Okay, so I was incorrect on the 8th century, but the point being, but Sinaiticus is older than this.
Bro, you're missing what I'm saying, bro.
No, hold up, listen. Sinaiticus,
you're completely missing what I'm saying.
No, I'm not missing anything. Now
you are, bro. You are.
I want you to be quiet and listen. Because I listened to you, now you're going to listen
to me.
But
you've misheard me.
Okay, everyone heard that you said it's the oldest Bible.
No. I didn't say the Garima Gospel is a Bible. The Garima Gospel is not a Bible. It's a manuscript. They use that manuscript to create a Tawahado. The
Tawahado is the oldest Bible, but here's the problem.
No, it's not a Bible. No. It's not a Bible. The Tawahado is not a bro. You're missing it. Bro.
I need you to mute. I'm gonna mute you just so you can listen. Please listen closely. This is your argument. You just said the Garima Gospels, the illuminated Gospels, are the basis of this purported Bible that's the oldest, that's known as the Tawahado, right? Now, here's the thing that I am telling you. Codex Sinaiticus is older than the Garima illuminated gospel books. It is older, and it contains the books of the Bible, and it is a Bible, and it is considered older. Alexandria, Codex Alexandrius is considered older. Codex Vaticanus is considered older. If I'm not mistaken, I believe Vaticanus is the oldest complete Bible. So what are you talking about? In fact, I'm going to read that to you right now because it's one of the four great unseals.
Bro, now, those are manuscripts, not Bibles.
No, may I comment real quick?
You cut yourself.
Sure
those are manuscripts, not Bibles.
Codex Vaticanus, look what it says.
It's Codex not a Bible.
I'm reading it right now. Codex Vaticanus is one of the oldest copies of the Bible, one of the four great unseals. All right? Codices.
Okay, so you're
Codex
telling me
name is after a place of conservation in the Vatican Library where it had been kept since at least the 15th century. Now, pay attention. Most current
discovered
scholars,
in 1947.
Most current, hold on a second. But this is now look at the dating. The date is 300.
Discovered in 1947.
The date is 300 to 325 AD. That is the dating of Vaticanus, sir. Now I'm going to show you Sinaiticus. Sinaiticus. Here goes another one.
Discovered in 1947.
Now look. Codex Sinaiticus, it doesn't matter when it was discovered.
Yes, it does, because the Garima Gospels was never lost.
The Garima Gospels were tested recently.
Was never lost.
The Garima Gospels were tested recently. If we're going to
They were never lost, bro. The Garima Gospels were never lost. The Codex was discovered in 1947.
I'm going to unbroadcast you. So
let's calm down for a second. I have a question. Well, the gentleman is no longer here.
No. I put him in the background so I could read this. Look at this. Codex Sinaiticus, or the Sinai Bible, is one of the four great unseals, codices, ancient handwritten copies of the Christian Bible in Greek. The codex is a historical treasure. Now, this is from 330 to 360. Now, again, this is still dating older than the Garima Gospel Illuminated Bible that this guy claims the Tawahado, or whatever he's claiming, came from. And I can show him that you have two examples right there that highlight that you have Bibles that predate this alleged Tawahado that are older.
It means unification.
So why,
bro? Those are not Bibles, bro. Those are manuscripts. This is elementary, bro.
Is Sinaiticus?
I'm not trying to debate. I'm trying to build with you, but you're saying.
Let's hold on for a second.
You're saying the Codex Sinaiticus is a Bible, and it's not, bro. So your source is even wrong.
Wait.
Your source is wrong.
It is a Bible.
Let's be clear.
It's not, bro. That's like second grade, bro. Come on.
Hold on.
You gotta be dumb as rocks, man.
I don't think the word Bible and the word manuscript are mutually exclusive options. You can have a biblical manuscript, i.e., a Bible in manuscript form, just like you can have
manuscript.
A Bible in digital form.
What I'm trying to tell you is factual information. The first so-called Bible ever made is the Ethiopic Bible. By 800 years, it predates King James. Bro,
No,
yes,
it's
it
not.
is. You're
Just to be
lying.
No,
clear,
it is
King
not.
James is
You
not
don't
the
know
You're
what
first
you're talking
lying,
Bible
about.
either.
bro.
I mean,
You
You're
don't know what
straight
you're
up
talking
lying to
about.
everyone.
Bring out your evidence then, unlearned
Bro, I
one.
just told you the book itself
Bring
is
out
the
your
evidence,
evidence,
and it's
unlearned one.
never been
Bring out
lost.
your
The
evidence,
Garim, hold
unlearned
on,
one.
bro. Hold
Unlearned
on,
one.
bro.
Unlearned
You're
one. You're on
running,
my
bro.
channel.
let's calm
Bring out
down.
your
You're
evidence.
running.
Bring out your evidence, unlearned one. I want you to bring out your evidence right now. Where is your evidence? Bust out your scholarly evidence saying what you just said.
Okay, I'll give you my
Bible.
evidence right
No,
here.
I want the.
Okay,
Don't give a
I don't
meme.
need
I don't
Google,
want
bro. I don't need.
I don't want a meme. I want you to bust out scholarly evidence that says what you just said, and I will bust out scholarly evidence showing the complete opposite of what you just said. Now hurry up
Okay,
and get your evidence. Matter of fact,
now
you got a minute. I'm gonna time
I'm
you.
not on a. I'm not on a
No, you
laptop.
are
I'm
on
on
a
the phone.
timer. I don't care if you're.
This is
You're gonna
basic
bust it
knowledge,
out.
right? And you see him
Get it.
running, right? You
Get
see
it.
him running, right?
Get it.
You see
Hurry
him.
up. Hurry up. Hurry up, unlearned one. Get your
Dude's a
evidence.
liar, bro.
Don't
Said the
jump on the
Codex
evidence.
Sinaiticus
Hurry
is a
up,
Bible.
unlearned
He
one.
doesn't know the
Hurry
Ethiopic
up.
Tewahedo
Let's take a
Your time
deep
is
predates the
running
King
out.
James by
Your
800
time is running
years.
out. You have a minute.
The
You gotta hurry
Garima
up.
Gospels has never been lost. The
Get
Codex
your
was
evidence. Matter of fact,
discovered in
you're going in the
1940.
background for 1 minute until you get your evidence. Your time starts now. Hurry up. I'm timing you. I'm not bringing you back in here until you grab your evidence. After this minute is done, if you do not have your evidence, I am booting you out of here because you're a liar and you don't know what you're talking about. So his time is already counting down, y'all. Y'all can count on your end if you'd like. Boy, oh boy, you talk about some of these guys are so knuckleheaded and arrogant.
Well, let's scale it back a little bit. I must confess that the most polite way I can put this is I'm not sure I understand the gentleman's reasoning. First off,
Does he have reasoning?
the word tewahedo it's a Ge'ez word. It means unification. It corresponds to the Arabic word tawhid. You'll often hear Muslims talk about the word tawhid. That's the Arabic equivalent of the Ge'ez word tewahedo, which means unification. It's used as the name of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church as a reference to their Miaphysite position. They take it that, in their rejection of the Chalcedonian Diophysite position, they would say that Christ's, divinity and humanity are united. Hence the phrase tewahedo.
Can you see your screen? Look at this right here.
Yeah, we can see it.
What is this is oldest. Now I want everyone to look at the name of this article. I'm just gonna do this quick because oldest Bibles of all time. Now here we go. Bishop's Bible is number 10. Geneva Bible is 9. The Great Bible 8. Coverdale Bible 7. The Leningrad Codex is 6. Aleppo Codex 5. Codex Ephraim Rescitus is 4. 3 is Codex Alexandrius. 2 is Codex Sinaiticus. And 1 is Codex Vaticanus. The knucklehead doesn't realize that the Ethiopic gospel books are not a complete Bible, but they're gospel books. And if he's claiming that this purported Tewahedo manuscript, or Bible, whatever he calls it, is the oldest Bible, how do we have Bibles that are older than the very basis for this supposed purported Ethiopic Bible? His time is up.
It's
uncertain. So his minute is up.
Where that was supposed to take.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you a chance. I'm gonna give you a chance, or dude, I'm gonna create a video and destroy your fucking channel off of your lives. I will create a video and destroy your whole channel off of your lives.
Do you have your source?
Bro, those things are not.
Get out of here, bro. All right, here we go. Oh, I see we got 93, the infamous 93 up in here. What's going on, bro?
Ah, nice. Maybe we can discuss the pews.
Wow, man. Like, y'all saw how dumb that argument was?
Well, let's politely say that it was difficult to follow.
I'm sorry, man.
I'm not sure
I know you're trying to be polite, Abu.
make.
I'm not calling the gentleman dumb. I'm saying his argument is dumb. It's just
it was
dumb
difficult
argument.
to follow.
What's going on?
Greetings to 93.
93, you gotta unmute, bro.
Oh, okay. I'm in here as 93. I tried to come in here as Richard Katz. I got to change my man. But anyway, yeah, man. I don't know what the last brother was trying to prove. I really don't understand what was the problem.
Trying to prove that Google scholarship doesn't work, man.
I wish he would have got past his point so that we could have really gotten to something interesting. But
yeah, we have another gentleman.
Yeah, did a good job. Oh, let him go.
Matter of fact, let me pull up this because I got the Garima Gospel, the scholarly Garima Gospel.
Let's let it go. If you let the gentleman go, let's let the topic go because it really was a distraction. Please.
Okay, I got you.
With all due respect to the gentleman, I mean.
Got you.
I see you have another gentleman in here.
Yeah.
although he's currently muted.
Hello.
Right.
Greetings.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, what's going on, man?
Greetings. Yo, what's up? I
You
have a
said it wrong,
question.
Abu. It's supposed to be greetings.
Greetings. Yes.
Greetings.
I have a question on the term Catholic. Is the Ethiopian Orthodox Tawahedo a Catholic church? Because I always thought like Tawahedo also meant whole as in Catholic. So would that also mean that the Tawahedo is a Catholic church?
Well, they're not in communion with what's popularly called the Catholic Church or the Roman Catholic Church, the Vatican. They've been separated from Rome for about 1500 years, but they are in communion with the Coptic Church. But of course, they have different liturgies, and the Tewahedo Church, they have their own liturgy. I haven't looked closely at their liturgy, but I'm sure as they recite, the creeds, the pre-Chalcedonian creeds, they would refer to themselves as Catholic in some sense. I've posted it on Twitter before. I would have to look it up though. The Ye Catholique or something like that. I forget what his term is for that. But yeah, it depends on how we mean Catholic. There's differences, and then there's going to be a lot of overlap as well.
Like, I know the Romans kind of bastardized like when you think of the word Catholic, you normally think of Roman, but I mean like Catholic as in universal. Like in one of your videos about King James, he said that he was a Catholic Protestant, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But like, yeah, Catholic as in part of the whole church, and Protestant as in the denomination, if that makes sense. So is
I'd put
no.
it this way: the Roman Church and the Tewahedo Church were once part of the same church, and they split in the middle of the 5th century. So in a sense, both would independently of each other claim to be the Catholic Church. Yes.
And by Catholic, what King James meant by Catholic is the universal church. That's what Catholic means. So, for example, if you were to talk to, say, an Eastern Orthodox person, they would say that they are the true Catholic Church, the true universal church, and
the Church of the Creeds, because the Creed also refers to
right, because obviously the Creed, which is holy and Catholic, right? So obviously holy, Catholic, and apostolic, and so. Yes, so Abu is correct, and obviously after the was it the Council of Chalcedon? Was it the Council of Chalcedon?
451.
Right, that both churches, what I would say that they split from East and West, because obviously at the time East and West were still unified as one church, so they split from the East and the West, and they and this is where the Oriental Orthodox Church begins,
over the nature of Christ, or perhaps a misunderstanding of such.
Yes, of course,
of his natures.
I hope that just answer your question there, Torio. Now, if you want to know why King James calls himself Catholic, it's very simple. As an Anglican, he believed that his church was a continuation of the churches of the the time of the apostles onward, and that they had deviated with the Roman Catholic Church over their disagreements. And so from King James' viewpoint, he believed the Anglican Church to be the true church in some capacity. At the very least, he believed that he was maintaining the true faith, and so therefore he believed in the 4 creeds. Was it 4 creeds or 3 creeds?
He said the creeds. He said he held to the first 4 ecumenical councils.
Ecumenical councils. Yeah. Okay, right. So in that sense, he would consider himself to be Catholic.
Well, that's like Johanna saying that his school is the true school, other than the other guy, right?
Yeah. Oh, Abu and I joke about this all the time. If you want to be technical, right? The original school, the One West, the original school is the ICGJC. So if we were to use some sort of parallelism here, I guess you could say that as far as they make their claims, ICGJC would probably be the Roman Catholic Church, and then Johanna would be the Eastern Orthodox Church, and then GOCC would probably be your Pentecostal, overly charismatic Christians, and then IUIC would kind of be like your Calvinist Reformed, that they seem to be the more popular and the growing in numbers. We could look at let's see, GMS would kind of be your independent fundamentalist Baptists. Let me think. What would we classify? Who am I missing? I feel like I'm missing somebody. Sakari would probably be your let me think of like a really Sakari.
It's okay. We got the gist of it.
Yeah. Sakari would probably be like one of these aberrant groups that like one of these like the Dravidian. What was it? The one with David
Branch Davidians. Yeah.
The Branch Davidians.
I think you have another gentleman in here.
Excuse me. Yes. Yes. So we have DeAndre Richardson. What's going on, DeAndre?
He may have stepped away. Oh, there he is.
So, oh, hey, what's up? What's up?
What's going on, man?
What's
So
up?
Torio, I hope we answered your question, man. I hope that
Yeah,
answered your question.
can I just clarify? So
Yes.
the term tawahido, right? Or sorry, tawahedo is
Tewahedo, yep.
basically the same connotation as the Catholic universal terminology, right?
It's used to refer to their belief in the Miaphysite doctrine. Tewahedo
Right.
literally means unification or
Mm.
union, and so it's a reference to a unification or union of Christ's divinity and humanity. So it's meant to distinguish them from the Diophysite churches, the churches that declare that Christ has two distinct natures, which would be like the Catholic Church, the Greek Orthodox Church, etc.
All right. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. All right. So if any Hebrew Israelite would like to join, you're more than welcome. The link is in the live chat again. And just to be on record, I just want to say this right now. Abu and I don't agree on everything. Abu and I
correct.
certainly have sharp disagreements. But as it pertains to the topic of the Georgia pews, the reason why we find this topic so fascinating is because obviously he and I, both being interested in linguistics in terms of the biblical languages and also many of the claims that are made for the pews, not just with Hebrew Israelites, because we've seen so many different claims. I remember it used to be what was the Egyptian language? Demonic, I think it was.
I think one gentleman proposed demonic. Yeah.
Well, I've actually seen various people proposing, a claim for that language. I mean, we've seen claims for Ge'ez, for that language, for Hebrew, obviously. For I think someone even proposed something for Aramaic. We've seen claims for Arabic, obviously. I mean, the list goes on, right? Pretty soon, I'm sure you're gonna get some of the old calendarists claiming that they found Greek there or something. Who knows?
There is at least one character that looks like a Greek character, looks like an omega. I've seen it. Excuse me, one marking, not a character.
Right. But if anyone has any questions that they'd like to ask regarding the questions about the Georgia pews or about Hebrew Islamism or whatever the case is, feel free to ask your questions. DeAndre, I know you want to ask some questions. Maybe 93. There's some certain questions that you would like to ask. We're definitely open to talking about this. Of course, Abu is the special guest today because we just had an appearance on the Brother Berean, and I wanted Abu to be able to clarify his position for others out there. So if anyone has any sort of disagreements with Abu on any topic pertaining to the pews, then they're more than welcome to come in here and share their disagreements with him, and they can have a discussion. And of course, they can have a discussion with me, although I am going to be very clear. If Hebrew Israelites come in here, and I didn't know if the gentleman who came in here was a Hebrew Israelite or not, but if you self-identify as a Hebrew Israelite and you come up in here, you are under the onus to demonstrate your ethnicity claim if you are claiming that you're an Israelite. I'm just going to be very honest and forthright. I know that Abu isn't especially interested in the topic, of ethnicity. I'll say that I am interested in the topic of ethnicity, and I would say that if you come up in here claiming a particular ethnicity, you're under the onus to demonstrate your claim. All right. Although Abu probably won't participate in the topic of ethnicity. But
I mean, I could discuss some questions that are related to argumentation. I'm not big on the whole identity claim issue, but sometimes what I like to do is see if people have a clear methodology for determining who is not an Israelite. You'll meet a lot of Israelites who say, essentially they'll say they're an Israelite and you're a Gentile, and somehow this becomes the crux of an argument. And what I always say is that being that they're making tacit lineage claims, I want to know their methodology for reaching these sort of flippant conclusions. Like, for example, a lot of times one Westerners will ask, "What's your nationality?" And what I always say to them is, what's your methodology? What methodology would you propose for determining my nationality? Like, for example, if you say I am whatever my father is, that merely pushes it back a generation. How do I determine his nationality? If you say,
right,
well, he is whatever his father was, again, we've just pushed the question back another generation. And if it has to be like, the paternal line across millennia, then no one knows their quote unquote nationality according to that methodology.
Of course. And I would also say that I think the question of nationality being presupposing the idea that the Israelites are one specific phenotype or morphology also begins to fall apart when we start to look at historical evidence that points in the opposite direction, right? Especially if we start looking at some of the interesting depictions in one Dura Europa synagogue.
or just common examples. Like, I mean, you can't determine a person's for example, for those Israelites that put emphasis on strictly on the paternal line, you can't determine a person's paternal line based on their morphology, based on their outward appearance. One of the ironic examples of that would be, for example, Lenny Kravitz. He has a morphology that is, if you saw him on the street, you would just, an Israelite would assume, here's a quote unquote Jake, but his father was an Ashkenazi Jew, Cy Kravitz. And so if they saw Lenny Kravitz, they assume Israelite. If they see his father, they assume, I don't know, Amalekite, Edomite,
yeah.
whatever it is. And yet they're part of the same paternal line. And that's just in a single generation. When you go on a scale of hundreds of generations, I mean, there's no way you could know who you descend from based on how you look.
Right. And I would say also the idea that you're determining let's be honest here. Not all Hebrew Israelites believe this, but certainly a good some of them do put some weight into nationality, because obviously they believe that there are certain prophecies or certain things that are indicative of them having to be Israelites in some capacity in order for the Bible to be true. Now, I'm not saying all Hebrew Israelites believe this, but certainly there are those who do hold to that sort of viewpoint. And for those people who hold to those viewpoints, these hangouts are made for them so that they can see why, someone like me definitely considers those sort of viewpoints to be unorthodox in terms of the Bible itself, history, the Christian faith, etc. I think that if a person puts that much weight into ethnicity to the point where you're willing to, in the case of some Hebrew Israelites, and more specifically the camps, because they seem to be the biggest offenders of this. When you have people who will tell you that your eternal standing before God is contingent upon your ethnicity, and they themselves can't definitively prove their ethnicity, it begins to beg the question on how one comes about determining whether ethnicity plays a role in salvation if you yourself can't concretely prove that you are who you say you are, right? And now this is where they'll say the Spirit bears witness with our spirit, misreading Romans 8:16. And I think it's problematic once one reads the Gospel of John chapter 1 verses 11 through 13, especially considering that, and also reading Galatians chapter 3, showing that those of faith are made children of Abraham by their faith, not by their ethnicity, not by their blood lineage. Because if that's the case, then every Israelite who believes on Jesus by the idea of ethnicity would have to have automatic access into the kingdom, but we see the complete opposite being conveyed in Scripture. And moreover, and let me just get this one last point out, I would also say that if a person looks at the Christian faith historically from the Bible onward to the time after the Bible, after the book of Revelation, the generations subsequent after, I would say that if you begin to look at what they believed in their external writings, the Hebrew Israelite viewpoint of the camps, the particular viewpoint they espouse, disappears. It goes away, because what these men were taught is demonstrably different than what the camps believe. Now, if you're a Hebrew Israelite of the other variety and you think that ethnicity is just important, even there, the idea of Israel being identified by skin color or by some sort of morphology is absent, not only in the writings of the early church, but also in the writings of the Jews, their own writings, the Israelite writings. These ideas are completely foreign. The idea that Israelites identify themselves by morphology, by skin color, by hair texture, it's utterly ridiculous. I mean, you could theoretically, so I'll put it to you this way: you could theoretically look like Larry King and be a physical descendant of Jacob, because regardless of what you think the Israelites look like, even if you presuppose that they have a particular morphology, hair texture, skin color, just because you have a particular image in your head of what they might have looked like, does not mean that their descendants are all necessarily going to look identical to them 2,000 years or 3,000 years after the fact. It's just not the case. I mean, you could change. You know what? Can I use this example? I'm not going to say what it is, but let's just say that without saying too much, Abu, you have a personal example of I won't say names.
We can discuss it. We'll say the descendants of my grandfather. We'll say.
Okay, so Abu,
my child and her cousins. Okay, my children and my children's cousins.
without giving away too much, let's just say this: in Abu's family, he has
Which
family
Faithful has
members.
seen. He's seen my family.
Yes, in Abu's family, he has members of his family, and I won't say what relation they have to him, but he has members of his family who, despite having a common progenitor,
Yeah, the
look
same paternal line. That's important. The same paternal line.
they look drastically different. In fact,
Mhm.
one of them is blue-eyed, blonde-haired, and then the other one has a morphology that would fit that of
Something straight out the Dominican Republic.
out of the Dominican Republic.
Just gay,
Exactly. Like imagine your typical Dominican with African features, and this family member has that morphology, and then picture the
And
other
they're only
family
2
member,
generations removed. They have the
and
same grandfather.
the same progenitor, the same paternal
Grandfather.
lineage on from both sides, and yet they are demonstrably different in terms of their appearance.
I'm sorry,
One,
same great grandfather. Yeah.
right, great grandfather. So one looks like they could have been raised in Los Angeles in some affluent Caucasian neighborhood, and the other looks like they may have come straight out of Puerto Rico or come out of like South America somewhere, or looks like they could be biracial. But needless to say, the morphology is drastically different between the two, and this is an example of just in a family where this is the case.
They're
Now
second cousins. Yeah.
Now imagine that, right? Now this is in Abu's own family. Now I can say the same thing about my family. If you look at my siblings, we all look drastically different. Yet we have the same progenitor. We are we have bloodline lineage that connects us, and not only that, I mean, again, even in the children of my siblings, their children are drastically different looking. It's amazing how that works, right? And this is, you're talking about maybe a generation, one generation, two
Mhm.
generations. I would even say this. If you
Abba
look at
Bivens' kids. We've seen Abba Bivens' great grandkids or great grandkids.
yes, we'll be on record about that too. Abba Bibbins has grandchildren.
Great
And by the
grandchildren.
way, for those who don't know, Abba Bibbins is the founder of One West, of the One West Hebrew Israelite School. The founder of the One West Hebrew Israelite School today has grandchildren,
Great grandchildren.
great grandchildren who look like they could be Ashkenazis.
Well, they in a sense they are. So for people who don't know, his some of his grandchildren moved to the state of Israel and married Ashkenazi Jewish women, and then they in turn had kids who married Ashkenazi Jewish women, and so now you have children. I've seen the bat mitzvah video of Abba Bivens' great granddaughter. So she's 4 generations removed from Abba Bivens, and yeah, you wouldn't know that. You wouldn't know that that she descends from a man on the tribes chart. Let's put it like that. I'm tempted to put the video on the link if you could, but you would have to play it without giving up the account.
Sure. By the way, someone asked, does anyone believe, Faithful or Abu, that scriptures like Deuteronomy 28 can have dual fulfillment prophetically? Well, here's the problem. Deuteronomy 28, in what it is in its immediate context, are the stipulations of the covenant that Israel was entering into. In other words, if you obey all the commandments that have been laid out before you, which start from the book of Exodus and go all the way to the 27th chapter of Deuteronomy, when you get to 28 is now laying out the punishments that will befall Israel if they disobey all the commandments that God had given them. And these are the stipulations of the contract, of the covenant. So basically, the covenant promises you'll be in the land. This was the promise that was given to Abraham, that was later extended on to Isaac and then to Jacob in terms of a promise. The fulfillment of that promise would be found in the people of Israel, in their going into the land of promise, the land of milk and honey, right? Hence the very phrase, the land of promise, right? Now, when we get to chapter 28 of Deuteronomy, the conditions of this promise of the land are as follows. If you obey all these blessings, and then it goes from, verses 1 through 15, 1 through 14, laying out all the promises. 15 through 68 lay out all the curses, all the punishments that will befall Israel if they disobey the covenant, if they break the covenant, if they turn their backs on God. Now, these are contingent upon being in the land. Obviously, the punishment of going into exile is in and of itself a punishment of being taken from the land of promise into an exile that takes them from the land of promise. What it's not conveying is the idea that you're going into an exile and then the exile from the exile. Rather, you're going into an exile from the land. So, for example, if you start, I'm going to just do this very quickly, Abu, and I'll let you chime in. If you look at, and I'm pulling it up on my screen so you can see it for yourself, because I want to show this biblically. When you look at Deuteronomy 28, you'll see for yourself. And let me actually pull this up. Here we go. Close this window. Close this window. So when we actually take a look at the chapter, you're going to notice that these are stipulations, that are contingent upon obeying the covenant, which obviously would be in line with them having to obey the commandments of that covenant. So it says, if you faithfully obey the voice of the Lord your God, being careful to do all his commandments that I command you today, the Lord your God will set you high above all the nations of the earth. And all these blessings shall come upon you and overtake you if you obey the voice of the Lord your God. Blessed shall you be in the city. What city? Their city. Blessed shall you be in the field. What field? Their field, because they're going into a land that's going to be their land, which was promised to them. Blessed shall be the fruit of your womb and the fruit of your ground. Notice it says your ground and your womb, and the fruit of your cattle and the increase of your herds and the young of your flock. 5, blessed shall be the basket and the kneading bowl. Blessed shall you be when you come in. Blessed shall you be when you go out. 7, the Lord will cause your enemies who rise against you to be defeated before you. Obviously, this is contingent on the promise. If you're obeying God, God will protect you from your enemies, right? They shall come out against you one way and flee before you 7 ways. 8, the Lord will command the blessing on you in your barns and in all that you undertake, and he will bless you in the land. Notice it says in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. So as you keep reading on and on, these are the blessings, and you'll just go on and on again. The fruit of your womb, the fruit of your livestock, etc., make you abound. Basically you'll be the head, not the tail, so on and so forth. So when we get to 15 all the way to 68, these are reversals of the promises, right? So for example, 16, cursed shall you be in the city, cursed shall you be in the field, cursed shall you be your basket and your kneading bowl, cursed shall be the fruit of your womb and the fruit of your ground. Notice that this is again contingent on the land. So they're going to be chastened while they're on the land. The ultimate chastening, as we continue reading, and this is from 63 all the way to 68, is that they're going to go into captivity from the land. And that captivity means that they're going to be taken from the land of Israel into a foreign land where they're going to be forced to serve their enemies in their land as opposed to being in their own land, right? So again, it says, cursed shall you be in the city, cursed shall be in the field, cursed shall be your basket and your kneading bowl, cursed shall be the fruit of your womb, the fruit of your ground, the increase of your herds and the young of your flock, cursed shall you be when you come in, cursed shall you be where you go out. So let me actually show you right here, starting at 21. The Lord will make the pestilence stick to you until he has consumed you off the land that you are entering to take possession of it. Notice again, the land is in view. And as we keep going on and on and on and on, you're going to notice that even as we get to 50, I mean, it's even before this, you're going to see this because it talks about them being cursed in their land. But 52, they shall besiege you, talking about their enemies. They shall besiege you in all your towns until your high and fortified walls in which you trusted come down throughout all your land. Now, again, none of this is applicable to the African diaspora if you consider that, one, the slaves that were taken over to this country, this wasn't their land, right? They were taken forcefully from the west coast of Africa to this land. And when they were in this land, they were subjugated. They were forced to be slaves, right? This wasn't their land. So these weren't their crops, their fields, their vineyard, and that sort of thing. So these could not logically be in reference to them. And moreover, I would say that as you continue reading, you'll notice that it says again, your towns unto your high and fortified walls, notice there's walls, in which you trusted come down throughout all your land, and they shall besiege you in all your towns and throughout all your land, which the Lord your God has given you. Again, the land of America was not given to the African diaspora. It's just not the case. And therefore, this couldn't be talking about African Americans. And as you continue reading, you're going to notice that this again keeps going on and on. Notice it talks about them eating their children, but again, they're eating their children in their own land. Because you'll notice in 57, it says, her afterbirth that comes from between her feet and her children whom she bears, because of lacking everything, she will eat them secretly in the siege and in the distress, which your enemies shall distress you in your towns. And this is why when we get to 63, it says, and as the Lord took delight in doing you good and multiplying you, so the Lord will take delight in bringing ruin upon you and destroying you, and you shall be plucked off the land that you are entering to take possession of it. 63 flows into 68. So the implication being the event of 68 is taking place via 63, meaning that the going into Egypt on slavery from ships occurs from the event of 63 of being plucked off of the land. The being plucked off of the land to be taken as slaves on ship is occurring from the land of Israel into the captivity, not from the captivity into another captivity. And I would say that the reasoning behind this, and it can also be found in Deuteronomy, is found in Deuteronomy 4, and I'll let Abu go after this. And as we read in verses 21 through 27, it reads, furthermore, the Lord was angry with me, this is Moses speaking, because of you, and he swore that I should not cross the Jordan and that I should not enter the good land that the Lord your God is giving you for an inheritance. Notice that the inheritance is the land, and this word for inheritance can also be found, if I'm not mistaken, the root etymology can be found in Jeremiah, because the inheritance was indicative of the land. So being cut from your inheritance or your heritage, because the English word heritage meant land, is indicative of the land. 22, for I must die in this land, and I must not go over the Jordan, but you shall go over and take possession of that good land, the land of milk and honey, the land of Canaan. 23, take care lest you forget the covenant of the Lord your God, which he made with you, and make a carved image, the form of anything that the Lord your God has forbidden you. For the Lord your God is a consuming fire, a jealous God. 25, when you father children and children's children and have grown old in the land, if you act corruptly by making a carved image in the form of anything, or by doing what is evil in the sight of the Lord your God, and so to provoke him to anger. 26, I will call heaven and earth to witness against you today that you will soon utterly perish from the land that you are going over the Jordan to possess. You will not live long in it, but will be utterly destroyed. 27, and the Lord will scatter you among the peoples, and you will be left few in number among the nations where the Lord will drive you. So where are they being scattered from? From the land. The scattering occurs from the land into the exile. So that's how that occurs. So if you ask the question, does anyone believe that it is a dual fulfillment in terms of it being prophetic? I would say dual prophetically for the people, the actual Israelites of the book, in that they most certainly were scattered and they most certainly were taken from the land. But as far as saying that this dual fulfillment somehow is indicative of particular people groups as a whole, meaning the entirety of the people group, I would, in the case of people who have no connection to the people of Israel, I would say no, this is not indicative of those people groups. Now, can you have amongst a particular people group that is non-Shemitic? Can you have amongst that people group people who physically descend from Jacob because of Israelites being scattered from the land of Israel into various lands? I could say yes. And do I believe that you have African Americans that are physically descended from Jacob? I would say yes. I believe that you do have African Americans. However, I don't believe all or even most African Americans physically descend from Jacob. That is my position. And the reason why: the genetic evidence is in there, the historical evidence is in there. Deuteronomy 28 is not talking about African Americans being Israelites. Can you have members of the African American community who physically descend from Jacob? I would say I'll give you an example of one who actually does descend from Jacob, or who did descend from Jacob because he passed away. The late Reverend Peter Gomes. He was an African American clergyman who, when he did his DNA study, found out that he descended from Sephardic Jews. And I think the plausibility that whether you take that those Jews were converts or whatever the case is, whether you're a convert or whether you are physically descended from Jacob, I think in the grand scheme of things, I think is neither here nor there. I think the likely case is that because he had the J marker, he had the Cohen modal haplotype, I would say that he's an example. Oh, and by the way, his ancestors were not taken as slaves. His ancestor migrated from the coast of Cape Verde into America. Just to be on record about that. His grandfather was not a slave. He wasn't taken here as a slave. He was a Sephardic Jew who was a descendant of the community that was in Cape Verde. And he migrated to America and married an African American woman, and they produced a child. And he later on was the result of the child of that child. And so I would say that there's an example of someone who was African American, who I believe was a physical descendant of Jacob. Again, the Cohen modal haplotype tying him together. So there you go. All right. So Abu, you wanted to share your thoughts?
No, not on this subject. It's not. Yeah.
But you know what? Let's be on record about some things, because I know this is, and I
Yeah,
know
it's an
you're gonna love
opportunity to
this.
do so.
Perfect opportunity. Abu, neither you nor I believe that all Ashkenazis are physical descendants of Jacob, correct?
Well, it depends on what we mean, of course. Yeah, of course. I definitely don't believe all of them are.
No.
What I would say
Let's
is,
be on record about this. I want this to be like a little. I want someone to grab this.
yeah.
Do you or I believe that all Ashkenazis are physical descendants of Jacob?
Definitely not. Well, again, but see, this is one of these instances where we have to be clear what we mean by descend. For those Israelites who put emphasis on specifically paternal line, patrilineal descent, my position is that when we're talking about strict paternal line, the majority of Ashkenazim do not descend from Jacob
Right.
patrilineally. Now, that doesn't mean I can speak on all of their lines of descent, but just on the strict paternal line, most of them do not descend from Jacob, and I have a reason for why I can say that with confidence. I don't know if that's your
we both
position,
have
but
a
that's
reason. I think let's be on record about this, because we have been falsely accused of believing every single Ashkenazi is a physical bloodline descendant of Jacob, and I don't think that's plausible for any people. In fact, I would even say this, even for the Hebrew Israelites who erroneously assert that African Americans as a people group are Israelites. Even they can't make that definitive claim that all African Americans are Israelites, given the history of slavery, given the things that happened to slaves, given that you had slave owners who slept with female slaves and produced offspring.
And intermarriage to this day.
And intermarriage to this day. I mean, it's just outlandish when you get some of these guys telling you that all, not saying that all Hebrew Israelites believe this, but particular Hebrew Israelites telling you that all African Americans are Israelites. Just outlandish. And even to say most, again, even there, it's going to be problematic when we start looking at the genetic evidence. I'll say this right now, since we're on record about this. Abu, let's talk about Kelly Richardson's outlandish claims regarding lembas, for example, just to use this as an example. Kelly Richardson believes that because he took a DNA test and he found out that he descended somehow paternally from a lemba.
Well, it doesn't even say that. His test didn't even, I'm not sure his test even said that. All it said is that, I think what his, now I may be wrong, but if I'm not mistaken, what his test was showing was that some of his genetic material overlaps with genetic material also found amongst lemba. I think that's what it meant. Not necessarily that on his strict paternal line, he goes back to a lemba, you know?
Right.
And so now I could be wrong about that, but if that's the case, that's sort of vague. He sort of leaps from this conclusion that because, certain scholars recognize lemba as having Jewish origins, therefore anyone who gets lemba on their DNA chart through GEDmatch must therefore be an Israelite. It's a huge leap in logic. One thing that's not clear to me is are there any African Americans who've taken this GEDmatch test that don't get that lemba result? Because I think what it is that now I could be wrong about this, but because I haven't looked at it closely, even remotely closely, but the impression that I'm getting is that if you have a West African marker, it's being noted that marker is also found amongst some lemba. I think that's what that means, but I would have to look more closely to know for certain. But whatever the case, even if you do descend directly from a lemba, it's a huge leap to say because some scholars recognize lembas as having Jewish origins, therefore anyone who descends from them is an Israelite. What happened is the lemba, like any modern population group, are diverse. Like even if we're just looking at paternal lines, some of them, bear haplogroup J. Some of them bear haplogroup
there's a gentleman.
E.
I'm sorry. There's a gentleman called Christian Killer, and he keeps saying, "Pull up proof that there is a Jew Y chromosome. Please show it." Well, if you come up in here, I will most certainly show.
Wait, I'm sorry. What's the question?
So he is saying, show proof that there is a Jew Y chromosome. Please show it.
A Jew Y chromosome? Well, I don't make that claim.
No. He's saying that to me. He's saying that to me. And I will most certainly show him based on the fact that, look, I'll give him an example. The Cohen modal haplotype. If one posits that the lembas are Jews, and this is what Kelly Richardson has done, right? Let's just use that as an example because we were talking about Kelly Richardson. And I'm going to use this to kind of join together. If they decide to argue against this, then they have to show proof against it. All right. So Kelly Richardson says that the lembas are Jews, right? Because Tudor Parfit wrote about the lembas having a haplotype that ties them together with Jewish communities, right?
Yeah.
Now,
they have genetic material that overlaps with mainstream Jews.
No, be more exact. With what particular Jewish group, including
the Kohanim found amongst Ashkenazim and Sephardim. So
right,
basically, what happened is that they did genetic tests on so-called Kohens. What's now the allegedly the remnant of the descendants of the priestly class amongst modern Ashkenazim and modern Sephardim, mainstream Jews. And what they found is that the Kohen modal haplotype is something that's found amongst a large percentage, not all, far from all, maybe roughly half of mainstream Jewish Kohens. And so, the geneticists who found this speculated that this could be, a marker of the hypothetical Y chromosomal Adam, the person that most modern day mainstream Kohens descend from paternally.
No, chromosomal Aaron, not Adam. Aaron.
Thank you. Sorry for that. I misspoke. Aaron.
Chromosomal Aaron.
The chromosome Y chromosomal Aaron. Thank you. Sorry, it was a misspeak. But something very close to, or maybe perhaps exactly like the Kohen modal haplotype, is also found amongst some Lemba, apparently in large percentage amongst a particular clan called the Buba clan, which was apparently traditionally like a priestly clan for them.
Before I bring Raven apologetics in here, let me go ahead and finish up this thought. So here's the issue for Kelly Richardson specifically. Kelly Richardson posits that the Lembas are Jews because Tudor Parfit wrote a paper basically saying that the Lembas were Jews based on their DNA and their purported oral traditions, right? Keeping in mind that in their own oral traditions, they said that they are the white men from Senna, and we can actually show Tudor Parfit literally saying that this was the Lemba's oral tradition in multiple sources, right? Including the book that Hebrew Israelites like to make appeals to, the Black Jews of Africa and the Americas. In that book, if I'm not mistaken, on page 159, he says it there. And then I believe it's in 163 as well, if I'm not mistaken. And so why were the Lembas saying that they're the white men from Senna? In fact, they would even go out on a limb to say that they're not black. If you asked one of the Lembas, are you black or who's black? They would point in the direction of the other Lembas and indicate that those were the black men, that they somehow weren't truly black. And so it's interesting because Kelly Richardson makes his argument for the Lembas. And meanwhile, the Lemba tradition that I guess Kelly Richardson doesn't seem aware of posits that their ancestors paternally were non-black men. Moreover, quote unquote. Moreover, let me say this: if he took a DNA test and found that his DNA overlaps with Lembas, what he doesn't seem to realize is Lembas have multiple DNAs, multiple Y DNAs within their people group. Yes. Meaning you have Lembas who are paternally E, meaning that they are non-Shemitic. They are non-Shemitic E. They are T. They have matter of fact 93. What other haplogroups do they have? They have
J. They have J. They
yes.
have T. And right. I think they have maybe some 30% E1 B1A. And may I add, that connection a lot of them get, they need to make sure that autosomally is not coming from the females, because all of the Lemba females are sub-Saharan Africans. None of them are none of them are Middle Eastern. That should give you a hint right now about what went on with them.
Mm-hmm.
All of the women are African.
By the way, Christian Killer, come in here. If you do not come into this room, then I'm going to say this right now. If you're not going to come into this room, we're not going to have you sticking around in the live chat trying to make little comments. We don't particularly enjoy people taking little pot shots in the live chat and while refusing to come into the room. But I see we have Raven Apologetics. Hopefully this is you. Now, Raven Apologetics, what is your theological position?
I'm a Christian.
Okay, you're a Christian.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, wait a minute. I think we spoke before, right?
Yeah, not too long ago.
Oh, my bad, bro. My bad. Yes.
You're good.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, for the mods, go ahead and send our friend here a bon voyage. Bon voyage, my friend. Talking about Christian Killer. Bon voyage, Christian Killer. Hebrew Israelites, I would like for you to come in here and have a cordial dialogue. You will be treated with fairness. But keep in mind, if you come into this room, you bear the onus of demonstrating your claim of being an Israelite. So, Abu, so let's continue with our conversation. So Kelly Richardson claims that he has his DNA paternally connects him to Lembas, not realizing that when you start looking at all because he showed his DNA results in terms of the groups, Now, just using common sense here, the groups that he's aligned with, it seems to be the case that those groups align him with the E haplogroup. So if he's aligned with
Well, or
Lembas,
at the very least, that's a possibility. Yeah,
a
that's what we would say.
possibility. At the very least, the possibility is he is more than likely aligned with the Lembas with the E haplogroup. Now, if he says no, and let's say he shows his results and it's the A haplogroup, even still, A does not connect him with communities of Israelites. It does not. A still shows him to be on the outside. It shows that he is more aligned with historical communities of Africans in the continent of Africa.
Well, I'll say this. I don't know what his paternal haplogroup is, so I won't speculate on that. But what I'll say is that the simple point is the Lemba, as we said before, like any modern group, like Ashkenazi Jews, like so many different groups, are genetically diverse. So saying that some of them have connections to mainstream Jews and saying that you have a connection to the Lemba does not mean that you therefore have the same connection that some of them have to mainstream Jews. Like there's sort of a there's a fallacious line.
Can you say that one more time for
of
the audience? One more time. Repeat what you just said one more time. Just
okay. So basically, what's being said is first off, you have the Lemba. Some of them, not all of them, some of them have genetic connections to mainstream Jewish populations, to portions of mainstream Jewish populations. Because mainstream Jewish populations are genetically diverse as well. And then Kelly Richardson and a number of other people, apparently, who knows, maybe every African American has genetic connections, or genetic overlap with the Lemba. But there's a leap in logic from saying, some Lemba are connected to mainstream Jews and some African Americans are connected or similar to Lembas. Therefore, we can connect those specific African Americans to Israelites. Like that's where the disconnect is. It's you can sort of think of it as like different circles. Like you can overlap with part of a circle and another part of that circle can overlap with something else, but that doesn't allow you to bridge the gap. Let's see how I could put it. I've told you this privately. Of all of my father's brothers, married Sicilian women, right? It's just sort of a fact that happened in my family, right? My father didn't, but all his brothers did, right? So you have within the lines of the descendants of my father's brothers, you have people who have Sicilian ancestry. I have genetic material that overlap with those children and grandchildren because, their fathers and grandfathers were, connected to my father. They were brothers of my father. Right. But that doesn't mean I share their Sicilian ancestry. You catch the gist of what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's a certain fallacy in there,
Not only that, I think the issue being that obviously, which I'm just going to be on record about this. I think that Kelly Richardson's argumentation is extremely poor.
Poorly thought out, for sure.
Very poorly thought out. I think of all the Hebrew Israelites that we've ever interacted with the exception of maybe Tahar, he has by far been one of the most clumsy in terms of his reasoning, in terms of formulating arguments. His arguments are just easy to bat down. I mean, Tahar is probably just as bad, if not worse. But given that Kelly Richardson is a non-One Wester, of all the non-One Westers, he's easily I would say the most uncareful. Can we say that he's the most uncareful in terms of his arguments?
I have to wonder if it just seems that way because we've looked a little bit closer at him than others, and therefore we find a lot more.
The ones that we've interacted with, as far as who we have personally interacted with, who you've personally interacted with, who I've personally interacted with, I can say, at least for myself, I don't know if I can speak for you, but I can say for myself, he has been the most clumsy. Now, would you say that from the people, I'm talking non-One Wester or One Wester, you can include both if you'd like. Would you say, well, let's you know what, let's not include him because he'll get mad and say we're including, even though he uses Lashawan Kodash. we could actually talk about that next, but would you say that amongst the non-One Westers, he is probably the most uncareful?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of uncareful people, especially, maybe amongst like the most prominent people, I guess. But no, it's, I don't know. It's there's a lot of.
By the way, 93. I want you to deal with this comment since Tudor Parfit actually completely and utterly debunked Hebrew Israelites on this point in his interview on the Dagger Squad channel. Of course, I'm not endorsing the Dagger Squad channel by saying this. I'm just simply saying Tutor Parfit happened to be on the Dagger Squad channel. So 93, let me go ahead and show you the comment on the screen. Although this person doesn't seem to want to come in the room and have a dialogue. What about the black Jews in India? They didn't turn Indian. The same guy Tudor who wrote about the Lemba wrote about them too. They passed through the same route. 93, shut this one down, please. Not just with what Tudor Parfit said on the interview, but what you have personally researched about the coaching Jews. Because I can say this, Tudor Parfit in his interview said that those Jews were not related to West and Central Africans. He didn't say that they were, in terms of people groups, non-Shemitic West and Central Africans.
Well, I would just tell that person to go Google and look at what the coaching Jews, they didn't disappear. Go look and see what they look like. When you look at coaching Jews, the first, well, as far as I'm concerned, one of the first depictions you're gonna see, the Portuguese. Ain't that ironic? The Portuguese, they have all these codices where they go around the world showing you what certain people look like. And yes, they show the coaching Jews. Yes, they're people of color. Yes, they show Africans. They're people of color too. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. If you go to India, come on, man, this is common sense. I don't know what portion of India are all black, and I know they don't like to be called black, but they are melanated people there. There are different shades of people there. Makes a lot of sense when you really think about it. There are a lot of so-called black Jews in India. There are so-called white Jews in India. They are not the same as Africans. The same thing Abu been saying all this show about morphology and how looks don't determine ethnicity.
Not to mention that they also look different from West and Central Africans, which is the ironic part, which they'll obviously ignore because they just hear the term black and they're under the assumption like, oh, it's like they become hypnotized. They just start thinking West and Central African morphology.
Well, yeah, you got there's a whole skin map that somebody brought to my attention, but I knew about it. If you look at the skin map of people around the world, you're going to find a substantial amount of people are melanated. They may range from lighter skin, like lighter melanin to darker melanin. But I mean, hey, look at the indigenous Australians. They're black. Does that mean they're Israelites?
I could play this whole interview right now, but I'm going to drop this link. I'm going to show the name of the video. How do I get rid of the chat? Let me get rid of this chat, man. The chat on.
I mean,
on
to be fair, the coaching Jews, the gentleman said they didn't turn Indian. I'm not sure what that means, but
they actually, if you look at all the sources,
the coaching Jews
are identified as looking like the indigenous population of Indians. And what's ironic is that you have ancient sources that refer to the Indians as black. Matter of fact, Herodotus refers to the Indians as being a form of Ethiopian or something to that effect, right? If I'm not mistaken,
He's talking about the people of coaches.
Yeah, ridiculous, right? But meanwhile, if you actually look at the people, they're remarkably different from West and Central Africans. In fact, because Tudor Parfit actually shoots that down in the interview. That's what's crazy. Like I could tell that this person, they probably hear someone say something on someone else's channel, and then
someone who took a clip from a 2-hour interview.
Yeah, and then meanwhile, the author himself. Here we go. So here's the video. Scholars 20 for 20. Number 8, Dr. Tudor Parfit, who are the lost tribes of Israel? I'm just going to say this right now to Taji Panda. If you believe in Hebrew Israelism, this interview is actually going to break your heart. What Tudor Parfit says in this interview undermines what you believe if you are a Hebrew Israelite, or if you subscribe to the tenets of Hebrew Israelism in terms of the ethnicity claims. It's going to break your heart because what he says there destroys a lot of your arguments. I would just say this. While I have sharp disagreements with Garfield was smart enough to ask Tudor Parfit the right questions that undermined the tippy-toeing that Kelly Richardson and Sister E did when they interviewed Tudor Parfit. And and I'll say that, Parfit for the most part gets to the nitty-gritty of a lot of the claims that you guys make, and he debunks it. And in fact, I could show you from his own book that he debunks these claims. Now he says that people can believe what they want to believe as far as religious belief, but as far as the validity of the ethnicity claims, Yeah, the ethnicity claims are demonstrably erroneous, and you could look at that interview for yourself. You could judge for yourself what Parfit had to say, and I could also show you other scholars that share his view on the very same topic. So I'm sorry, but you're gonna have to do better than that. So anywho, and I could play the clip right now, but I figured I'll be here for like another, who knows, probably gonna start winding down in a little
Yeah,
bit.
because I gotta go.
But before you go though, I wanted to touch on the topic because I think this is important because we've
Get a
seen
few
a
more
lot of
things on record.
yeah, a lot of things that side has brought out. So Abu, here's the thing. Again, it seems that Kelly Richardson and his side are very ignorant of genetics. You know, I'm not even going to get into the whole Jed match stuff, but just genetics in general. They're just ignorant.
From the
of
little bit I've
genetics.
seen, their arguments are poorly thought. Well, this is what I'll say. This is why I've said
No,
this
I
before.
want you to say
They
it.
don't even have clear
They're poorly
definitions
what?
of
They're
Israelite.
poorly.
As far
No,
as I
say
can
it,
see.
please say it. I
Okay.
want you on record saying it. They're poorly what?
A lot of their arguments seem poorly thought out. The impression that I get from, because I've asked Dante to, to clarify his position on who is and is not an Israelite, and I don't think they're as clear as like one Westers are. Their positions are vague. Like for example, Yacoba and them, they recently, when they were trying to critique Ron Dalton, they had said that like you could have, I mean, they didn't say this explicitly, but the insinuation is that you could have a person who descends from Jacob paternally, but if he's white, then he can't be an Israelite. And it was like, what, is this a morphological reference, or how much emphasis do they put on maternal lines? But it's unclear, and it's very hard to get them to clarify their positions. Even Kelly Richardson, just to put it mildly, their positions don't seem clearly thought out, even from a cursory look at their, like for example, Kelly Richardson was on record. He played this video where someone was talking about Tudor Parfit and some of his stuff on the Lemba, and it said that it's talking about the Cohen modal haplotype, and that at one point it says that the Cohen modal haplotype is found in, let's say, 50% of a certain clan amongst the Lemba, and it's found amongst only 3% of the Jewish population at large. And Kelly Richardson said, well, that's a problem for them, and insinuated something to the effect of they're not the people, by saying that he's making the Cohen modal haplotype, a tacit requirement for being an Israelite. But once you do that, I imagine that's going to, sort of blow up in the face of a lot of Israelite positions.
It completely undermines his own claim if he doesn't have because here's the thing. He presupposes that if he's connected with Lemba communities, he's under the assumption that his connection is via something other than the Cohen modal haplotype. I'm assuming, right? Because if he's casting aspersions on the Cohen modal haplotype, not realizing that the Cohen modal haplotype is what ties Lembas together with all these other community of Jews. It's that particular haplotype that joins them together with other Jews. It's not the E haplogroup. It's not. It's literally J. It's the Cohen modal haplotype, the specific type of J. And if he doesn't have that specific type of J, in theory, he's shooting himself in the foot regarding his own claim of being an Israelite. And I would say he's also shooting the people in his group in the foot on their claims, especially given that I have seen some of these guys like Benaya and some of these other guys argue, where they argue for E being the quintessential haplotype that is the Israelite haplotype for
which is
Jacob's
ridiculous.
descendants. And then meanwhile, you have Kelly Richardson basically arguing for the Lemba being Semites, not realizing that it's through the Cohen modal haplotype that they are being considered by some Jews. I mean, it makes no sense if you think about it. I mean, from his viewpoint, it's problematic. It's not problematic for us. It's incredibly problematic for that side. One last thing, though, before you go, I wanted to ask you about just this idea of whenever you've interacted with one Westers, they have the tribes chart, right?
Mm-hmm.
They make their arguments generally for the tribes chart, right? The 12 tribes chart.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
When they've made their arguments, right? Because it's clumsy as well from their end.
Mm-hmm. Very.
You are who your father is, right? Which then begs the question, well, what's his father?
Yeah.
And then the next question is, what is his father?
Yep.
And what is his father? And what is his father? And his father? And his father? And his father? So then it leads down this unfortunate road of having to constantly prove the lineage of
Yeah, a literal endless genealogy.
but is the same true for the non-one Wester side in terms of how they're arguing for lineage?
Well, that's the thing. At least the one Westers can say that straight. They can give you a straight answer. It's the paternal line back to Jacob that makes you an Israelite or not. But with these guys, it seems like they're so much more vague, and they're thinking not in lineage terms, but rather in morphological terms. And so, Dante says everyone's running from him. I've tried to correspond with him and politely ask him his positions and try to discuss his reasoning, and he avoided it. He would just balk and say, "Oh, stay out of black business and stuff." This kind of silliness,
It's
stay
like
out of our
he's
community's
unable to
business.
reason, right? Like Dante seems like and I'm just gonna be on record saying it seems like Dante Fortson is unable to have intellectual discourse that requires actual reasoning past a superficial level.
Yeah. And he really does not like being questioned on his ideas, on his reasoning. He just keeps saying, "Oh, there's so much evidence on my website. There's so much evidence on my website." But it's like, well, let's
Very
discuss
debatable.
your interpretation of these sources. And that's when he gets all flustered and starts saying, like, he literally will say things like, you scumbags aren't saved because you only attack us because we're but you don't attack the Ashkenaz. And it's like so weird, this sort of attempts to
Abu, can
get
we be on
emotional
record
and
about that
avoid the
too?
topic.
Can we be on record about that too? We have planned videos against Tobias Singer and various mainstream Jews as well. And trust me, we were on record today saying we don't believe all Ashkenazis are physical descendants of Jacob. And the reason why is because the genetic evidence, we believe that the genetic evidence shows diversity within Ashkenazim.
Oh, actually, yeah,
But
can we touch on what I was saying about the paternal line real quick?
very quickly.
Very
Let me
quickly.
let me just get this one part out. Just this one part out. 36 to 43% of Ashkenazim have the J marker, right? That means that 36 to 43% of the entire populace, whether in the state of Israel or outside of the state of Israel, have the J haplogroup. Now, yes, it's only 36 to 43%. I'm sure Hebrew Israelites are probably giggling and saying, aha, that's the evidence. But here's the thing. If we're making J the theoretical tie-in with a community of Jews, because generally this is what science does. Generally speaking, whenever they tie together these groups, they're going based off of the J haplogroup. I've even seen this in papers when they've talked about the community of Sao Tome. They've mentioned the absence of J specifically, saying that there seems to be the lack of J as the particular haplogroup they're looking for. Therefore, they are more skeptical about the claims of the people of Sao Tome who have descendancy from these Sephardic Jewish communities that once inhabited the island, who intermingled with the local population and amalgamated with them. They have skepticism regarding the Jews of the island, perhaps being physically connected to other community of Jews that have J. So it would probably be more than likely the case that those Jews may have been converts that went to the island, right? The pretty much the Jews that went to the island were converts. On the other hand, Cape Verde actually has a significant amount of J amongst the populace. In fact, the gentleman in question that I mentioned earlier, Reverend Peter Gomes, his great grandfather was genetically J with the Cohen modal haplotype found amongst Sephardim, being that his paternal line goes back to these community of Jews that were in Cape Verde, and later his great grandfather migrated to the United States. Then I don't know if it was his great grandfather, his grandfather, then his father, et cetera, et cetera. You can see where he was first generation born over here. He's a descendant of those Sephardic Jews, and he was a black man based on the fact that his paternal line seemed to have been mulatto, and his grandfather married a African American woman, and then his father married an African American woman, and here you have him with the typical African American morphology, and yet he was genetically on his father's side J. I think that J is the tie-in. So if J is the tie-in, I would say, and I know I'm going a little longer than I said I would. I said I'd be short, and I'm going long. I would say that if a person is genetically J and they have some sort of family history that leads them back to community of Jews, I think the likelihood of saying that they're Jews is highly likely. Ashkenazim have the highly likelihood of being Jews in the 36 to 43% range. And even if they're converts, it doesn't negate them from being historically Jews, because Judaism has always embraced conversion from biblical times onward, right? But Abu, you wanted to talk about, the idea of, Jews and Ashkenazim and that sort of thing. So,
Well, no, the only thing I was going to say was regarding strictly paternal line, because when you talk about, descent in general, it's very difficult to say who someone descends from, because, if you take into account all your descendants, I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of people. But in terms of the strict paternal line, what I always like to point out is that the Ashkenazi community, in terms of paternal haplogroups, Y chromosomal haplogroups, are so diverse that no single haplogroup has a majority amongst them. So what that means is that even without knowing, assuming there was a historical Jacob, I know some secular folks, but from a biblical, Bible affirming perspective, we assume there was a historical Jacob. Even without knowing the haplogroup of the historical Jacob, we can still say that most Ashkenazim do not descend paternally from the historical Jacob. Now, why is it that we can say that confidently? Because the fact that no single haplogroup has a majority amongst them, that means that no matter what haplogroup you choose as the hypothetical haplogroup of Jacob, only a minority of Ashkenazim have that particular haplogroup. No matter what haplogroup you pick, the majority of Ashkenazim will not have that particular haplogroup, irrespective of which haplogroup you pick.
Mhm.
So that's why we can confidently assert that the majority of Ashkenazim do not descend paternally, on a strict patrilineal line from Jacob. It has to be the case
but we can't
genetically
say
that the
this, though.
majority of them descend from converts.
But we can say this, though. But if we're talking about 36 to 43% of the people group, because obviously you have amongst Ashkenazim, you have a diversity of haplogroups, right?
Yeah.
36 to 43, their largest paternal haplogroup is genetically J. So we can say that the largest haplogroup that they have is J. Of all their various haplogroups, that's their largest. So we can say that their majority haplogroup is J. And therefore, by extension, we could say, if you're going to pile them up into percentages, right? Let's say 43%, 36. Let's go with the high number. 43% happens
Which
to
is still a
be,
minority, though.
which is still, well,
It's
no.
less than
Actually,
half.
we could say it this way. Well, if we look at it this way, I don't think a majority necessarily has to be the idea of 80% of the population versus 20%.
No, I would
think
say a majority is more than half.
out of the vast diversity of haplogroups, I would say that so imagine 43% happen to be J. Let's say, I'm just going off of theoreticals here because I haven't looked. I don't have it in front of me. I'm not looking at it right now. Let's say 43% is J. Let's say 30% is R1, the R1B haplotype, right?
Yeah.
And let's say
maybe 5%
right there,
for G.
So let's say 40, 50, 60, 70, so 73. So let's say 15% happens to be, let's see, 40, 70. Let's go 15% is E1B1B. Let's go with that, right? 15%. Right? So 50%. So there are three major haplogroups happen to be J, R1B, and E, right? E1B1B specifically, E1B1B. Now, let's say the rest of it is just divided up with all these other little haplogroups.
Like G.
But let's say that the three major ones happen to be 43,
right.
30, and 15. Now, if we're going to take up the rest, and let's say like it's just divided up in intervals of 5, let's just go with that, like 5, 5, 5, until you get 100, right? So once we've accounted for the populace, I would say, theoretically speaking, if this is, we're going with these various percentages of people who have these differing haplogroups within Ashkenazim, the largest segment is J.
Right, the largest minority is J. Yeah.
The largest. Well. See, that's the thing. When you say the largest minority, you're saying that because minority would indicate that in the people group itself, amongst Ashkenazim, the largest segment of their haplogroup is J. How does this become a minority? Explain to me.
In this sense, let's, like, hypothetically speaking, I don't actually do this, but just for the sake of argument, let's let J represent Israelite. And let anything else represent non-Israelite, right? Okay. If we do that, then the majority is non-Israelite. And so there would be an
I see what
Israelite
you're saying now.
minority.
No, I get what you're saying. If we couple all the various haplotypes that are not J, the majority of yes, I see what you're saying now.
Yeah, like if
Okay,
you
so you're
separate
saying
it into, you basically put it this way: let's separate out the Jews into
okay,
those
makes
that descend
perfect sense
paternally
now.
from Jacob
Makes
and
perfect
those that
sense now.
don't. Those
Right.
that don't are the majority. Those that
So in
do
other words,
are a minority.
if we're going with 43%, that means 57% of their DNA is non-Israelite, meaning
Well, no,
that
no, or that 50% of them, 57% don't descend paternally.
yeah, descend paternal. Well, that's what I mean. No. Okay,
Yeah.
right. Let me correct myself. 57% of their paternal lineage is, if we're using J as the hypothetical founding Israelite haplotype, right? J
Haplogroup.
would haplogroup. Pardon me, haplogroup. J would be the haplogroup. If it's the founding haplogroup, it would be the minority in light of all the other diverse haplogroups that are found amongst them combined to make up a majority against the 43%. Right?
Yeah.
So in terms, but if we're looking at them individually, just breaking them up individually, it is the largest minority haplogroup.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the funny thing is, even then, presumably, like for example, there was a mass conversion of Edomites under Hyrcanus, right? So
Yes.
presumably, converts from the Edomites would also have J, if J was,
that's
so
correct.
even J by
Yes.
itself doesn't mean necessarily Israelite. It would just mean Semitic, hypothetically speaking. Like because Arab converts could likely have J as well. Hypothetically
But
speaking.
now let's do something, because I don't want to leave people on that note, because then it's going to seem like I'm sure the Hebrew Israelites are going to try to quote mine the heck out of this one. Let's shoot.
But they wouldn't
But
be
why is this? Hold up.
misrepresenting me if they did it.
No, I get that. But let's do something though, because we want to show the flaw in their reasoning. Now let's shoot them in the foot with this the very logic that we just employed, right? Because I've used this.
You can apply it to the tribes chart.
I've used this, right, but I've used this against Hebrew Israelites, even those who are non-one Westers. I've used this against them. If they're going to say, well, look, right there, you're making a better case for us. Actually, no, it's the other way around. Even if they were somehow genetically descended from Edomites are still Shemites. The logic is that they don't think, I'm saying this for the non-one Westers here, the non-one Westers think that the mainstream Jews are not Shemites, right? They'll say that. They'll say they're non-Shemitic people. Well, if one argues that they're Edomites, then they are Shemitic people. And then it begs the question, if you have these non-Shemitic people that you assert shouldn't be looking the way that you assume Shemites look, and the reason why I say that is because our unlearned friend Dante Fortson happens to have a video called that's supposed to premiere on the 13th called at 1 p.m. today, undeniable evidence that Shem's descendants were and are black. Well, it begs the question, are all of Shem's descendants black? Because if Ashkenazim, I would assume he believes Ashkenazim are descendants of Japheth. But the DNA evidence shows that they have a significant chunk of their populace that actually is genetically Shemite.
Or at the very least, I'll say this about the Ashkenazim. Just as we can say that the majority of them don't descend from Jacob, so too we can say the majority of them do not descend from Japheth either. The majority of them do not descend from Esau. Excuse me. They're so genetically diverse that they don't descend from any one person in the majority, and so that's why he's so clumsy with that. He keeps on saying, "Oh, well, my Bible says that Ashkenaz comes from Japheth," but it's as childish as saying, my Bible said the Egyptians come from Ham, therefore all modern Egyptians are Hamites.
No, but
it's ridiculous.
Here is the lack of reasoning on his end with that argument.
Of course, it's very poor.
The Ashkenazim or Ashkenazi is not indicative of who they descend from paternally. It's indicative of what medieval Jews considered to be the land.
It's a linguistic and geographic designation, and in some sense,
it's an appellation that is indicative of where they believe their ancestors, whether they were converts or not, where their ancestors were scattered into. Or rather, where their ancestors were raised, they grew up, and if they believe, I'm saying if they take the view that these are all converts, then it would still indicate that these people became converts in the land of Ashkenaz, what was called by medieval Jews and by the sages the land of Ashkenaz, which encompassed Germany and Poland and some other countries on that side of the world. The point being, it's indicative of Well, two things. Well, one, where many Jews believe the base population of Jews that were scattered into, and secondly, it then begs the question: why is this same logic not employed for Sephardic Jews? Because they have no issue referring to Sephardic Jews as being "quote unquote" their people, right? Because I've seen, especially Dante, claim that Sephardic Jews are the kin of African Americans.
He said that.
Well,
You
because
said
he
the
makes
current Sephardic Jews are
no. Sephardic Jews, the 17,
from the Middle
15.
Ages. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. Though, when he makes appeals to, you know what he makes appeals to.
Right. I got you.
But the point is that if they're referred to as Sephardic Jews, then why is this same reasoning not employed with that group of Jews? So shouldn't they be descendants of Sephard? There's a nation called Sephard in the Bible that's a Gentile nation. So by that same logic, shouldn't we assume that they're the descendants of this Gentile nation? By that same logic,
or the same thing. Well, what's another analogy aside from Egypt? Israel. You have a modern state called Israel, but Dante would never assume that. Well, it's called Israel, so let me see where Israel descends from in the Bible and assume that applies to everybody. So, but
Right,
then why apply that to modern Ashkenaz? The same thing with Egypt. Like you look up, Mitzrayim comes out of Ham, but that doesn't mean that everyone in the modern state of Egypt therefore descends from Ham. It's just such a sloppy argument on his part, and it's been explained to him. And he can't get it because his reasoning is very poor. With all due respect to him, and that's he just gets frustrated and resorts to name calling. Oh, you're a scumbag. You're not saved. Blah blah blah. That's the kind of stuff he says.
You know what's interesting though. What I find utterly fascinating is that hold on one second. What I find utterly and just demonstrably fascinating, just incredibly fascinating. Dante Fortson, man, the sort of logic that he employs, it's so arbitrary and base level. It's essentially based on morphology, but it's also based on just sheer ignorance, right? The idea that I guarantee you, if any one of us were to show him the wall paintings, the wall frescoes in Dura Europos, his first inclination is just to say, "Oh, that's whitewashed," right? Anytime you show Hebrew Israelites of that caliber any sort of imagery, since they like to use imagery that contradicts their viewpoints, automatically it's whitewashing, white supremacy, whatever tomfoolery they like to come up with. But if we look at these wall frescoes in Dura Europos, for example, right? You see Jews depicted in a wide variety of ways. Even within this one insular community, you see, for example, depictions of one biblical patriarch might be depicted a little darker than another biblical patriarch. Then they have another biblical patriarch looking doggone like almost like the Jews that they reject, the mainstream Jews. I don't know.
I've
actually seen depictions. I could actually show you in Dura Europos. There are depictions of Jews that run the gamut. So it leads me to believe that this community itself, because perhaps the base model for these depictions may have been the community itself. Perhaps this community, I'm just saying this theoretically, I'm not saying this as a definitive. Theoretically, the community may have been depicting the members of its own community. And it begs the question, if you have members of your community in whether they were bloodline descendants or converts, for a Jew, being a convert, being a bloodline descendant, I mean, for a Jew, it was like, what mattered is for them, were you, in covenant relationship with God? Were you circumcised?
Yeah,
that's what mattered to a Jew.
Converts, yeah.
Right. Yet, and it seems that the Jews in their external writings had a drastically, even in the Bible, let's not even talk, for many of the people of the land became Jews. They became Jews in Esther 8:17. Somehow Hebrew Israelites overlook stuff like that. You can't become a Jew. And meanwhile, the Bible itself bears witness to people becoming Jews.
Yeah. Conversion is all over it.
But
still, and then on top of that, the very Sephardic, like even if that's the funny thing is that these guys claim they descend from these Sephardic Jewish communities that existed before, let's say, the late 15th century. But we have much of the writings of Sephardic communities, and clearly they were practicing rabbinic Judaism. They accepted converts. I mean, it's
Amsterdam.
Say it again.
Amsterdam.
I said Amsterdam in particular. They own black slaves. So that what y'all owning African slaves and y'all the Jews. And they didn't want to convert African slaves because they didn't want to be associated with being black. So are these their ancestors? I mean, they all persecuted.
Oh, and
They're
by the
slave
way,
traders in Senegal.
Dura Europos is in Syria, just in case any Hebrew Israelite is wondering, which is right. That nation is right above Israel. So the nation of Syria, which is right above Israel in roughly the same region, this is all Western Asia, and somehow these Jews are depicting themselves in ways that would make Hebrew Israelites uncomfortable. Again, let me go ahead and just show one example of Kohanim. Let me just show this, man. I just got to do this, and I'm not saying that all the Jews have to look exactly like this. I'm just using this as a small example. For instance, here you go. Look at that gentleman right there, looking exactly like those priests in the Passion of the Christ. I might add, right there. Here we go.
When the white man whitewashed, in the 244 AD, they was whitewashing back then, brother.
Now, keep in mind that in Dura Europos, you run the gamut. Now, I am of the personal belief, and I think Abu, I've shared this with you, and I've shared this with 93 as well. I believe that the Jews were an amalgam of different people from the beginning. I mean,
also these terms are very vague. That's the one thing I've learned. When you start looking at people arguing online about the Dura Europos depictions or the Fayum mummy portraits from Egypt, and even stuff that's outside of the Israelite spectrum, what I've learned is that these definitions of white, black, non-black, non-white they're not clearly defined. Yeah. I mean, I remember just recently I was I don't know, I feel like it was like less than 2 years ago, when the Pope visited Morocco. He met with the king of Morocco, right? Mohammed.
You gotta meet.
And so I was like in a cafe that's within the confines of my job, and somebody remarked, "Oh wow, I didn't know the king of Morocco was black." And somebody else goes, "What are you talking about? He's not black." And these two guys start arguing it like he's clearly black, and the other guy's saying, "No, he's clearly not black." They're looking at the exact same human being because they clearly had, he's sort of on the margins morphologically, so they had very different, poorly defined notions. And that happens with these like attempts to interpret the Fayum mummy portraits. You'll have one person saying, "Look, here's what Egyptians look like in the 1st century. They don't look black to me." And somebody will say, "What are you talking about? So many of our people look like that." And then the same thing with the Dura Europos. I've seen people do that. These terms are not well defined. And so I that's why I'm never big on these attempts to like infer morphology from an image, because what
we call that looker ship.
Definition of a vague. Say it again.
I said we call that looker ship.
So here's the thing, though. The reason why I personally bring up the, for example, I bring up Dura Europos or the Fayum mummy portraits. For example, the Fayum mummy portraits are an example that you have a wide variety of appearances of this people in the Fayum region. In fact, many scholars believe that this was indicative of the populace of Egypt during that time. Like if the general populace of Egypt would have been mixed up in this fashion. You have Romans intermarrying Egyptians, Egyptians intermarrying Greeks, Greeks intermarrying who knows, Ethiopians intermarrying with who knows, Assyrians.
And not only that, even when we say Egyptian, it was probably a diverse society. Anytime you have an empire, you're going to have a diverse society. Because you're going to have people
transcontinental country.
Say it again.
So transcontinental country. They mixed with a lot. Them Egyptians were more mixed than a lot of us black people want to admit. They loved mixing. They did that.
But here's the thing, though.
They're right at the center of Asia, Africa, and Europe, practically.
Well, Abu, check this out. This is my view concerning the people of Israel in antiquity. I think if we look at all the sources and we just weigh it out, I believe that the people of Israel were a diverse-looking people. I think even in populous Arab populations, I should say, in the Arab populace, because Arabic, I should say, is a language designation in Arab.
Yeah, it's a linguistic group essentially. Right. So it's sort of like saying Hispanic.
So for example. Exactly. No, that's a great example right there. I'm glad that you brought that up. It's like us as Latinos, me being a Latino, my people group is diverse. You have Latinos who are black and you have Latinos who are not black. You have Latinos who are in between. You have Latinos who look like they could pass for black or pass for white or pass for
from Dolph Lundgren, people who look like Dolph Lundgren and people who look like Wesley Snipes and everything in between. Yeah.
Now,
and it's the same thing in the Arab world.
But watch this. So I remember my father. My father was very logical. He was a very logical man. When he thought about the people of Puerto Rico, he said, "Look, the idea that Puerto Ricans, at least during his time, keeping in mind he's speaking of his time,
Mm-hmm.
Modern times, Puerto Ricans didn't think of themselves, for the most part, most Puerto Ricans, not all, but most Puerto Ricans, that at least the ones that he encountered, didn't think of themselves in sort of these designations of necessarily black or white. For example, you had guys that could be as white as Donald Trump, but their hair texture was coiled, like almost like afro hair, like black people hair, right? But their skin tone, their morphology, the nose, everything was alkaline, just looking very European. If they shaved their heads down, they would look like your typical like they would look like, I don't know, like Andy Griffith or something, I don't know, or some Nordic person. On the other hand, you have people with the opposite effect, right? Where they have straight hair, bone straight hair, but extremely dark skin. I mean, dark skin, right? And all the features that would make them look African, with the exception of the hair, right? Which shows the genetic diversity of the people of Puerto Rico, which shows that on the island, for example, theoretically, my father encountering some of these people, let's say the gentleman who had that hair, for all we know, he could have had a black father and a white mother, or conversely, he could have had, or what we would perceive to be a woman of African ancestry and a father of European ancestry,
Or a Sephardic Jew,
or a Sephardic Jew, right? He
or an
may have
Arab,
had no
and so on.
ancestry to Africans and just be a Sephardic Jew, right?
Or an Arab. I mean, how many Latinos have Arabic names?
Exactly. Now, for me, it's the same with Arabs, and I assume the same would be true if we're just going off of how human populations work. The same would be true for Israel. That you have a diversity within Israel. You would have different looks, hair textures, skin color, nose widths,
and
etc.
lineages, and different lineages.
And lineages, right? And what bears witness to this is we see this in the Bible itself. The mixed multitude that leaves out of Egypt. Perfect example. Leviticus 24, 10 through 11. You have a young man who is the son of an Israelite woman and of an Egyptian man. The father is Egyptian, the mother is an Israelite, right? You have an example in the Bible where this young man was in the nation of Israel with that sort of lineage. And I'm sure we could look at examples, Joseph marrying an Egyptian woman, and two of the tribes, Ephraim and Manasseh, coming from that union. Moses marrying an Ethiopian woman. Later on in history, we see Timothy being the offspring of a Jewish woman, an Israelite woman. Let me be more exact. They don't like the term Jewish. An Israelite woman and a Greek man. So on and so forth. It's funny. Here you have Paul embracing the young disciple Timothy, despite the fact that if Timothy lived in modern times, especially for those who hold to the 12 tribes chart, they would have rejected Timothy. He would have been outright rejected if they knew who his father
GMS.
was. Oh yeah. I could read a spirit, Doc. No, you gotta do Tahar's voice.
I'll never forget when Vocab had that marathon conversation with Tahar up in Morningside Heights. At one point, Tahar said he said in his high pitched voice, he goes, "We got more white members than anybody."
I could read their spirits, Doc. I could read them.
They said Hulk Hogan was an Israelite, man. That's crazy.
Yeah. Listen, Leonardo DiCaprio is an Israelite. Bruce
I remember
Lee's
when they were
Israelite.
going through the list. John Travolta, and I'll never forget. There was a day where they were going through that. They were naming Bruce Lee, John Travolta, Leonardo DiCaprio. And as they're going through it, GMS is doing this. Rakah says Mick Jagger, and Tahar goes, "Oh, I don't know about that, brother." And Rakah goes, "Well, he gotta be." It's like he has to be because I like him.
Yeah, that's the spirit, Doc. Okay, well, I guess you're right.
Mick Jagger, you got some big lips.
Anyone I like is an Israelite. Tahar said Bill Maher is an Israelite.
Bill Mars. Wait, what? Wait,
Bill Maher, as in from Real Time with Bill Maher on HBO.
Get out of here. Bill Maher.
Tahar said he's an Israelite.
Are you?
He said Conor McGregor's an Israelite.
Wait, whoa. Conor
McGregor. He Irish, ain't he?
Conor McGregor?
Yeah, he's Irish. Yeah, any boxer that Tahar
the Irish.
No, I mean
the Irish are Israelites.
Yeah, Tahar's on record saying that.
That reminds
but they believe the Irish are Israelites. Yep, Mark Wahlberg. Yep.
You know that.
Anyone they like.
But see, here's the thing, though. But it's so arbitrary. It's like you said, it's just based off of whoever Tahar likes that day. And if you get on his nerves, then you're looking a little Watutsi to me. Looking a little Watutsi. Like, like I'm threatening your ethnicity because you got on my nerves today. Now I'm gonna cast aspersions on your ethnicity. Like, what did he say to Nathaniel? You're looking a little Watutsi now.
Oh, yeah, that's important. Let's tell that story now. Vocab
Yeah,
tells
please
in
tell
his
that
book.
story. Yeah.
Because this is the thing. Like Tahar's whole thing is that he can read your spirit. So he knows if you're an Israelite by reading your spirit. But he's also declared all kinds of people who he doesn't like, including people who left his group, of being non-Israelites. Like he'll say, oh, this guy was a Hamite. That turns out that guy's an Edomite. This guy's an Elamite, saying this about former members of his group. And it's obvious that, because he's angry with them because they're apostates now from his group, he's now declaring them non-Israelites, right? But he would never admit to that. But the insight into his psychology was one time when he was angry at Nathaniel, he looked into a camera and he said, Nathaniel being the leader of IUIC, a former student of Tahar, he looked into the camera and said, you better be careful, Nate, because you're starting to look like a Watusi. Now, the reason why that's significant is because obviously in One West conceptions of Israelite identity, he can't be careful. Either he descends from Jacob or he doesn't. But what Tahar tacitly meant was, if you keep angering me, I'm going to declare you a non-Israelite in the recesses of my own mind.
Right. Before you go, man, Lashwan Kodash, because I know we didn't get a chance to go into that on Berean's channel, and that was something I certainly wanted to tackle, but obviously there were other things that needed to, be taken care of. Which, by the way, I have to admit, it was a bit interesting since we're live on there. We're being very transparent with this live stream. I thought that was interesting towards the end. I don't know what happened there. I don't know what that was about, but I mean, we could talk about that off air, but that was a bit interesting there. You think he was trying to protect
on purpose?
Yeah, like as soon as I started going into mainstream, I said he's an anti. When I said Dante's an anti,
they were saying in the comment section, God turned the live stream on.
Yeah, I saw that when we came back. You saw that.
And then when y'all came back in, I was like,
the truth back.
Yeah.
And listen, and as soon as he I don't know, something happened, and when I came back and I made sure I said, yeah, he's an anti-Semite because he goes after mainstream Jews, and if any of you got a problem with that, we can go live on my channel tonight. Oh man, look, but I do want to say this though. I'm glad that we're on record now, so people know our actual position, and hopefully they'll watch this, which I doubt they will, but if they do,
well, make sure it's public, and
oh yeah, it's absolutely going to be public. You bet your bottom dollar it's going to be public. But
you bet your bottom shekel.
Y'all looking forward to Jonathan Short's interview?
Oh yeah, listen, don't give nothing away now, 93. I think you and I all know, all of us know. We're just gonna stay quiet about that, but look out for the 17th of this month. Jonathan Shorsh, the author of Blacks and Jews in the Early Modern World. Oh, Jews and Blacks in the Early Modern World. He's going to be on Garfield's Dagger Squad. Now, again, I'm going to be on record. This channel does not endorse Garfield. I remain an opponent of Garfield's. However, I must give Garfield, got to tip my hat off to when he has scholars and people on there that I think would benefit the discussion that Christians and Hebrew Israelites have. I think it's important to look at what these professionals are actually saying, especially when you have guys like Jeshuv misusing these sources, right?
Because we should be benefiting from y'all good brothers and sisters channels. So I mean, hey, ain't no shame in y'all game. We took a lot of great arguments, great information by listening to Christians and other people who share. Man, I wouldn't have nothing if it wasn't for Faithful Channel. So
right,
shout outs to him and Abu. Abu is the man.
Thank you, sir. I really appreciate it.
And speaking of which, very briefly before we end this thing, about Lashawan Kodash, I know you plan on putting out some more videos in the future, particularly to address Kelly Richardson's arguments for Lashawan Kodash.
He's a funny guy.
I know he's very, very funny, almost like a clown car posse-esque,
But you retracted that one, so
that's right. Yeah.
So not at all like that.
Okay. Yeah.
Not at all like a clown car posse.
Gotcha. Thanks for catching that. No, but as far as Lashawan Kodash is concerned, for those who might not be familiar, and may be watching this for the first time, and may not know, whenever we mention Lashawan Kodash on this channel, what is Lashawan Kodash in essence, and why is it a aberrant pronunciation system?
Well, yeah, Baron. I don't know. It's a historically it's a historically unjustified or unattested approach to pronunciation, and it's a highly simplistic one vis-a-vis other Semitic languages. But Lashawan Kodash is a system of Hebrew pronunciation that was developed within One West, and it works under the assumption that every Hebrew character has only one possible vocalization. And that's the gist of it. And they use this to come up with their names for God and names for Christ, like they refer to Christ as Yahushai. And it has no basis in history. It's very much a modern invention, and it's an oversimplification of Hebrew pronunciation. And Kelly Richardson, though he sort of half denies it, is a proponent of Lashawan Kodash. When he was on,
which ironically enough is derived from the camps. Now again,
One West, he got it indirectly from them. Yeah, he gets so upset about that. Oh, you're lumping me together with the camps, but no, I'm not. I'm not saying you have the same doctrine as them, but you've clearly adopted their system of Hebrew pronunciation. He even uses their diacritics. Kelly Richardson uses the Aria's made up, paleo diacritics, which is hilarious.
Actually, you know what? Since you mentioned that, let me actually link people who may be interested to watch this after this live stream is done. There's a video on my channel, which is a compilation of several of Abu's videos, and it is, I think it's Lashawan Kodash. Is it Lashawan Kodash Modern Influence? I think that's what it is. Right, here we go. So let me just show this very quickly, so everyone can find it, and I'll post the link in the live chat. In fact, what I'll do is I'll post the playlist, so this way everyone can watch all the videos.
And then I gotta go.
Yes,
it is very late.
So you would say that Lashawan Kodash, in essence, has no justification in antiquity as far as
absolutely none. Our oldest evidence, supports Hebrew having more vocalizations, than Lashawan Kodash acknowledges. That's the simple way to put it. There's no evidence of any point in history where Hebrew was just all A-class vowels, and then the
I for ayin.
Yeah, or the sade, they pronounce it taza. There's absolutely no evidence of anyone pronouncing the character taza.
So this is the video, Lashawan Kodash Expose Modern Influence in LQ Diacritical Marks. Abu actually goes into the topic of the diacritic marks of Lashawan.
Yeah, it's funny because One West rejected the diacritical marks that,
let me just show it on the screen real quick.
Signify the vocalizations.
Let me fast forward in the
Masoretic text, but then they introduced their own.
Okay, so here would be the example. All right, let me actually see if I can scroll up. Here we go. So here would be the example of the diacritic marks right there. There's an example right there as you see it on your screen, right underneath the old image of quote unquote Yahushai, right? And here goes more. So here would be another example. Oh, what just happened here? All right, here we go. So that's another example of the diacritic marks of Lashawan Kodash, correct?
Yes. Yeah, precisely. Yeah. And Kelly Richardson uses those little marks, at least what Ariel called the connector, which is the little smiley.
If we could actually do something in the video, I'm going to show it because it's right here. Here is the ISUPK teaching the diacritic marks,
which is probably where he indirectly got it from. I think he got it from like a cousin who got it. Do you see right there?
So everyone can see it on their screen. This is a video from the ISUPK, and they are actually teaching Lashawan Kodash with the diacritic marks of Lashawan.
They're made up diacritics.
Yeah, made up diacritics, right? So let me actually do one last thing. Oh, before we go, I gotta play something. I think you know what I'm gonna play, Abu. Don't say anything, Abu. Don't say anything. It's gonna be a surprise for the audience and for you, even though I think you know what I'm gonna play.
Yeah, I know what you're gonna play.
From now on, for the audience out there, I'm gonna let you guys in on a little surprise. Every time I end Abu's videos, I'm gonna play something really special. Don't give it away yet, Abu. Don't give it away.
Don't do Garfield like that.
I'm gonna play something real special, man. All right, I'm just letting this thing load. It's taking a minute. There we go. All right. So for the y'all, and this will probably end this stream after I play it. All right, here we go. Where is it? There we go. Okay, here we go. Gonna link this.
You're going from a downloaded version, right?
Yes, I am. Oh, okay, yeah, I gotta do something. Oh, yep. Well, I'm glad that you reminded me. Gotta be smart. Gotta be smart.
Yeah.
Let me do something real quick. I'm just gonna change the name. Man, you saved me there, Abu.
Hmm.
Saved me, buddy. I'm not gonna say why, but you did. All right. Let me actually do this real quick. And also, Abu will continue to have his videos on this channel exposing the linguistic side of the Hebrew Israelite movement in terms of
Of
crazy
Israelite
claims.
foibles.
But by the way, in just to be on record about this, in your many interactions with Hebrew Israelites, you don't say any names. I don't think anyone should get any promotion if you kind of catch my drift. But can you say that you have met, in terms of the Hebrew language, have you met Hebrew Israelites who are brilliant in terms of Hebrew? Because
Absolutely. There are definitely Israelites who are quite proficient in Hebrew, far more proficient in Hebrew than I am. They're not out here, engaging in polemics, but they exist. They're some of them are just, they just happen to be men who are brilliant in Hebrew and also identify as Israelites. Yeah, there's definitely men like that. I mean, I know them personally. I know some men like that personally.
And would you say that for many of them actually do not have the same view of modern Israeli Hebrew that the camps, for example, may have?
Well, yeah, it depends on the person. Obviously, it differs from person to person. But yes, there's, some of them are going to obviously have more sophisticated views of modern Israeli Hebrew. Look at that. Even 93 left. We're blowing it here. We're burning the midnight oil, as they say. Let's play the
Here we
clip
go.
and run.
Here we go. So
Shalom, everybody. Good night.
oh, wait a minute. I got one more. Before we go. Oh, he's back. There we go.
There's a lot of one mores here. I think like an hour ago we started with the one more thing before we closed down.
And then there's another one more. And there'll be another one after this one.
Yeah.
No, just
Yeah. How
oh
many
man, this
last things?
Excuse me. Oh goodness gracious, what is going on with my screen tonight?
Yeah,
Oh,
let it appear at the next video that you upload, because I really.
Oh, okay. So you wanted to be a surprise for everyone? I was.
Well, I mean, not that anyone's going to care. They'll just find it perplexing, and we'll see if anyone can decipher what the character says. Right.
Listen, have it there at the end as have it there at the end as an Easter egg. Some people are
Exactly.
going to think that you're promoting crypto Islam.
We'll see. All right. On that note.
Actually, you know what? This thing just froze. Yeah, you know what? We'll end it on that note. I'll keep it for a surprise for tomorrow. Abu, I appreciate you for coming on through, man. Thank you very much for your very long appearance on this channel. It's been long waited for us to have a live stream with you on here.
Especially since we were on Berean show before this. I am exhausted. Yes. This is.
Yes. Well, I certainly appreciate you for coming on through. Thank you very much, and hope to do this again sometime in the future, man.
All right, God willing.
Yep.
God bless.
All right, God bless. All right, so what I'm gonna do, guys, is I'm probably gonna end this live stream in a second. Actually, before I end this live stream, I'm gonna. All right, give me a second, because now my screen just froze. I'm trying to end this thing. How do I end this thing? All right, here we go. Guess gotta close this. Oh boy.
Uh-oh.
My bad, y'all. I don't know what happened there. But anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and end this live stream. So I definitely appreciate everyone for coming on through. God bless you all. Hope this edifies someone out there. And until next time, take care. And again, thank all of you for coming on through and showing support.